You may find yourselves facing your worst fears in this room. Know only that no harm can befall you whilst I am here. I must ask you not to scream. It might provoke them!
Cornish Pixies?
Freshly caught Cornish Pixies. Laugh if you will, Mr. Finnegan. The Pixies can be devilishly tricky little blighters. Let's see what you make of them. No!
You're listening to the Mystic Menagerie Podcast, your regular descent into the world of alternative entertainment, art, and culture. Bolt the door, light the fire, and pour yourself a glass of Virgin Rouge, and let your hosts, Dan Baines and Lord Freddie Valentine, guide you through the Stygian depths of your darkest delights. Warning. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Mystic Menagerie Podcast with myself, Freddie Valentine, and Dan Baines.
Hi there, Freddie. You okay?
Yep, fantastic. Yep, we've got a very interesting show this time, haven't we? Here, and lots to tell people, lots of exciting things, and some very strange things this time as well.
We have, yeah. It's all seems to have been kicking off since the last episode when we had Chris Gould on the show.
Definitely. I mean, that was a great interview with Chris, and Chris was fantastic. You know, a lot of deep philosophical stuff there. You know, there's dream within a dream.
That's it.
Going into alternate realities. You know what I mean? It was like the oral equivalent of LSD, I think, that show.
Well, the feedback we had from that show and the amount of listeners went off the record. That was the most listened to show, and we had the most comments about that. I mean, I was getting private emails about, you know, Chris's interview and how good it was and how we should have him on more regularly. And, you know, you could have all the celebrity guests in the world, but Chris seemed to really be the bizarre cherry on the cake when it comes to guests.
The main man, definitely. He's the one that, you know, I think that his deep insights were something different to the show as well, because, you know, we cover all sorts of stuff, strange and unusual things, horror here, bizarre stuff, bizarre performance, and Chris, you know, added a lot to it, so it's great to have him on the show. But we've got another packed show this time, and to start off, we're talking about the Patreon thing we've got going here, Dan.
We've finally got it up and running.
Yeah, because a lot of people have asked in the past, you know, about sponsoring the show in some way or contributing towards it. You know, we'd rather do something more solid rather than just people PayPaling us bits here and there, and do something where they can feel part of it and they can actually be rewarded and be part of the show. Because if you're listening to it, you know, we consider it to be your show as well as ours. You know what I mean? You're the listener base. We want you to be included in it and part of it. So we're trying to involve you in that as well. So it's been set up today, isn't it, Dan? It's just gone.
It has, yeah. We've covered it probably in about the last 4 shows. We've been saying we're going to get Patreon up and running, but I've never backed a Patreon project myself, and I've never done a Patreon project, so it's all a learning process. So in order to get things up and running, we've kept things relatively simple, first of all, for listeners. So as it works is you pay us, or you donate to us per show. So at the moment, we're knocking out sort of a show once every sort of 3 to 4 weeks. And as a Patreon backer, you can choose to pledge either $1, which is basically a thank you for visiting, and, you know, your dollar will go into the pot and help Freddie and I develop the show even further. You can go to the $5 level. It's all in dollars, by the way. It's because it's an American site, so it's if you're an English person, you're getting everything dirt cheap. So $5 will get you, that's the Dark Acolyte level. So if you've never had or never purchased a previous copy of the PDF Mystic Menagerie magazine, if you back us at that level, you can choose 1 free copy of the Mystic Menagerie, any back issue per month. We'll just email it to you. Just let us know what your choice is, and we'll also give you a personal shout out on the show. And the biggie, currently it's at $15, which we think is a bit of a bargain. However, you know, it could go up. So if you want to get your foot in the door quick, now's the time. But this is the Mystic Menagerie Inner Sanctum member level. So if you want to be part of a prestigious secret society, now is your opportunity. And what we're going to do is we will reveal the dark secrets held within the walls of the menagerie to the listeners who dare pledge the $15 per month. And what we'll do for that is you'll have access to essentially the Inner Sanctum workshops and additional content. So every show, me and Freddie will record an additional 30 or 45 minutes, and it's for your ears only. So we'll cover stuff which is more for closed doors. So we'll cover more stuff to do with magic-based, also prop design, developing your character, obviously without blowing our own trumpets, Freddie is pretty much a full-time performer, and I am a full-time prop designer. So you're going to get the best advice straight from the horse's mouth, as it were. And you'll also get a shout-out on the podcast, and you'll also still get to select your free copy of the Mystic Menagerie magazine. So all in all, it's a pretty good deal, I think.
It is, yeah, and the future is the start of it, really. And we want you to, if you like the show, to get on board. If you just donate $1, it's something.
$1, I'd buy that for $1.
Yeah, about that. That Robocop, isn't it?
Yeah.
But if you just put $1 across, that's something. Do you know what I mean? It helps us out, and we want to continue doing this show. But there is, as we go along, as we get used to using Patreon and things like this, there's going to be some very special things coming up as well, and some unusual, quite big things, which are quite exclusive. Which, if you're a Patreon, subscriber, you'll be able to sort of take advantage of. There could be things like might be going to one of my seance nights, or meeting me and Dan in London and looking at the Ripple location, or something along those lines. There could be something like that in the future. So we're not entirely sure what. We've got a few ideas, so there will be something in the future that will be quite exciting.
Well, that is our first milestone goal. I thought I'd put one in there. I'm not sure if you've seen it yet, Freddie, but as soon as we start hitting $500 per month, which is actually less than what we were getting when we had the magazine in print. So what you're talking about, 260 quid. As soon as we start getting £260 per month from Patreon backers, Freddie and I will arrange the Mystic Menagerie Bizarre Day Out in London. Okay, so join us for a guided tour around all the disturbing locations and seedy joints, followed by a meet and greet sort of Q&A session at the 10 Bells, probably something to eat, and copious amounts of alcohol at the very pub where the Jack the Ripper victim hookers used to hang out before they got slaughtered. You can't get better than that. And Jack himself.
Exactly, and Jack himself, And the thing is, these sort of special events that we may plan, they will only be open to subscribers of the Patreon account. So if you're actually a subscriber, you will get to know about things. You know what I mean? You'll be able to take advantage and join along with these things. Whereas, everyday common or garden person will not be able to do that. So you'll be in a very elite group of people that can experience some very strange and wonderful things ahead. Yeah,
depending on how popular it gets, I might even do some exclusive versions of existing, tricks and props that are only available to Patreon backers. But as we say, it's early days yet. But if you want to back us, you need to go to patreon.com, which is patreon.com, and / the Mystic Menagerie, and that will take you directly to our page. Or just go to the search bar on Patreon and type in the Mystic Menagerie, and you'll see our little sort of begging letter, a few nice pictures, and a detailed breakdown of what you get for your money. But if you think about it, you're getting, previously, if you used to buy the magazine, it used to cost you £4 per copy. At the moment, you're getting the audio version for nothing. So, show your appreciation if you've got any. You might not appreciate what we do, but if you do appreciate what we do and you think we add value to the community, not just the bizarre community, but mainly the dark arts, so horror films, dark literature, art, you name it. If we've got our foot in that area, then we consider ourselves to be supporting it in some way. And support us and be part of the team. And you never know, we might even do something someday where we, do like the Keith Chegwin, knock on your door and come and surprise you and do the show from your house.
Yeah, I mean, in your front room,
in your
cellar,
cellar,
garden shed or something,
Yeah, so that's it. We're all up and running. So we've got, as we say, we've got quite a fun-packed show ahead. We've got a our bizarre life, which we're going to cover in a moment, has gone quite bizarre to the point that we're not really going to talk about other things that we've been doing, because this one thing is kind of the paranormal corner and our bizarre life all rolled into one.
And it's kind of, it's consumed our life in the last few days, where we've been baffled, amazed, confused. Do you know what I mean? Everything about this, but we haven't really talked about anything else.
Yeah.
Because it's such an odd thing.
It is. So if you stay tuned, we're going to cover that in a moment. We've also got an interview with... It's a bit of a weird one, because it's an interview with me, but it's also an interview with Oliver McNeil, who is a fantasy photographer to the stars. Okay, so he's photographed people like Tom Baker, Andy Nyman. He's a very good magic photographer from Legends Photography, and he kind of came around here, and we did an interview. I did an interview with him for this show, and he interviewed me for his show. So if you go to the fantasy podcast, if you already listened to that, then you may have already listened to that particular interview, but if not, stay tuned. It's quite good because it's a bit of banter going back and forth, and it covers all aspects of magic, Call of Cthulhu, spooky locations, and fairy festivals and all that. So that's an interesting interview. Of course, it's interviewed with me, so it's going to be relatively interesting, I like to think.
Excellent. Of course, you can follow the Fantasy Podcast on Twitter as well, and follow and get it down on the podcast. So they are.
And it's the Fantasy Podcast, and I think he's already up to about something like his 7th or 8th show. He's really knocking them out, but he's interviewing some really good people, like we've got the chap from Marvel, Ian Livingstone from the Fighting Fantasy books. Do you remember is it Nightmare, the TV show?
I remember that, yeah. I do remember that.
Well, he interviews the guy who started Nightmare Live, which is travelling around the country at the moment, and you can basically put the helmet on, and same as the TV show, when your friends direct you through rooms doing little tasks in order to get to the end goal, which I don't think anyone ever does, to be honest. I remember them saying on the podcast that no one ever in the TV show finished Nightmare. It was you always died.
Yeah, I do remember that. I remember the Fighting Fantasy books as well. I think they came out in the early 80s.
They did, yeah.
I remember there's quite a few of them, and I think they went for quite a while. I remember having quite a few of those books. I was quite interested in them. The thing is, those stories, they were good because you could follow the stories and that, but I couldn't be bothered with rolling dice and all that. I just want to get to the next bit,
Yeah, I think quite a lot of people did that. They'd just say, okay, I'll beat that monster, so I'm going to carry on.
You want to find out what happened next, but it's a good podcast, and it's worth checking out because there's lots of stuff on there of interest to people who listen to this podcast. So I feel that it's one worth checking out. And also, talking of Twitter, if you're not following us on Twitter, we are on Twitter with @Menagerie Mystic.
You're the Twitter master at the moment, aren't you, Freddie? You're in charge of that sort of section, and we're getting a surprising amount of followers from genres that we wouldn't think we'd normally get them from.
Yeah, most of the people that we assume listen to this show, or the people that we talk to and stuff like that, aren't following us on Twitter for some reason. But a lot of people in the TV and film industry and the horror industry particularly are following us on Twitter, which is really good. But we built the accounts, and they've been going for about a month or so. So if you want to follow us on there, Menagerie Mystic, we're going to sort of tell you all the latest gossip and what's going on with the show and stuff like that. We're also going to post interesting stories. So if I find something particularly odd or interesting or worth looking at, or some strange links or things relating to the show, say we discuss something on the show, I'll find a link to that subject and post that as well. Because I remember we did one, not the last show, maybe the one before, we talked about urban exploration, and I posted a great link to a website on there, which is Abandoned Britain, which has a lot of the stuff we talked about in there. So there's some of the background to the show will come up on the Twitter as well. So if you follow us on Twitter, you'll get extra bits and pieces there to back up what we've been talking about, and also unusual things we find as well. So I like odd and quirky stories, so if I find something particularly weird and unusual, I'll retweet it.
Yeah, and some of our actual listeners are putting us in contact with potential guests for the show, which is great. So our first shout ever goes out to Laura Steele, who spoke to Tom Burgess, who is going to be our guest on the next show. And
Brilliant.
He's a comic book artist and an editor for a magazine, and there's we'll cover more when we speak to Tom. Because he's a very interesting character and he's got a lot of interesting projects on the go at the moment. So we'll let him unveil all of that to you, but just keep you posted. Thanks to Laura for spreading the word, and she's definitely sort of keeping making sure Mystic Menagerie gets out there.
Yeah, definitely. And we say that Laura Steele is listener of the month.
Yeah, definitely.
Listener of the show. So that's the...
Yeah, there you go. You can feel proud now, and you've now heard your voice beamed over the...
airwaves, your name.
Over the airwaves,
into the ether. All that's on iTunes and YouTube and everywhere else. So yeah, Laura Steele, thank you, and you are the listener of the month.
That's it. And if we transmitted this out, her name would continue to go out through space.
Aliens may
and maybe pick up.
Laura Steele is
maybe the ones that got Chris in the last episode.
Abducted Chris. They might be thinking, who is this Laura Steele person? Do you know what I mean? This is very interesting.
They might come for her next.
You just never know. Maybe alien listeners, so they may now know who Laura Steele is as well as us. So that'll be nice. Maybe get a few aliens on the next show if aliens are listening to us. If we're being beamed across to Alpha Centauri, or whether aliens, please get in touch. We'd like to have you on the show. And
also, if you like the show, help us get up the iTunes charts and leave us a nice review. It doesn't matter if it's a 3-star, but we really like to go for the 4 and 5 stars if possible. And if there's anything you want us to cover, then drop us a private email either through our Facebook page. Or just tweet us a subject that you think we should cover, and we'll add it to our ever-growing list of things that we're going to do in the future.
Yeah, we do read all of our tweets and Facebook messages and comments and all that. So any sort of suggestions you have, or any ideas you have, we are listening. Our ears are open.
They are, and I'm quite proud at the moment. I've not done many definitelys or you know what I mean. We must be getting good.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's helped us out. You know what I mean?
Yes. Great. What we're going to do is now we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back with Our Bizarre Life.
Miles away in Connecticut, Mathilde claims God reached out and touched her, but not in an inappropriate way.
I was cleaning my kitchen and walking back and forth. All of a sudden, I see something there. Like the Lord told me, look at here. I'm here with you.
So what's Mathilde's icon? This door! Holy schmeezus!
Welcome to Our Bizarre Life. This is a regular section where normally Dan and I talk about different things we've each been doing. But this is something that involves both of us, actually.
It is.
And it's crazy, isn't it?
It is. It's a weird one. But I think if you look at it, then me and you are probably the best people to approach about it. Which will all become clear to the listeners in a moment, but it's in areas that we've previously dabbled in.
Definitely, and it's also something it's quite unusual because the way it came about, it's quite odd because a lot of the people that follow us we've got on Twitter and some of the listeners are people that are involved in the sort of sort of esoteric world, or do you know what I mean? The things like fairies and all that kind of stuff goes. A lot of people were connected with that, and I thought that's what on Twitter we have people sort of following us that are more interested into the sort of paranormal side of things or horror films and that kind of stuff. So it's sort of going beyond the original audience, and which is where this came about, because what happened was I got a very odd message on Twitter. The private message things you get.
Yeah.
And first, I remember I said to you, I thought it was someone mucking about as a hoax.
Yes, especially with my previous connection with hoaxes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And this chap who contacted me wanted to remain anonymous,
as they do,
and particularly, because usually I thought if someone's sort of telling me what they were telling me, surely they'd want some publicity or they're doing it for some sort of reason. But this person just wanted to speak to us about this.
Well, he's anonymous as far as his Twitter tag was initially, but we don't know if that's a made-up one. Yeah.
We won't tell what his Twitter tag is.
No. We've said we're not going to disclose any information about him at all. So there's only me and you know
who he is.
His vitals at the moment.
Yeah, so we'll stick to our word with that. We are men of honour. But this chap said he had a very interesting story regarding something that he had found.
Yes.
And he sent it, obviously, in Twitter. You can only send so many characters via the message. But he said, send me your email address and I'll forward the story on to you. I want your opinion on it and you might feature on the show. So I gave him my email address. And the email I got is this. Basically, this chap is from Cornwall. Mm-hmm. For American listeners, that's on the south coast of the UK.
It's the pointy bit at the bottom, to the left.
And Cornwall's quite a strange, because there's a lot of myths and legends there, do you know what I mean? There's a lot of magic and history there, do you know what I mean? There's sort of like King Arthur's Castle, there's a witchcraft museum, there's stories of a race of giants used to be there. So it's quite rooted in culture and folklore. You know, so people that aren't British listen to this. That's basically what Cornwall's about. And it's a beautiful place as well. The scenery is some of the best scenery in the UK.
You've got Dartmoor down there.
Dartmoor.
Yeah, a place where I did my basic training on Dartmoor, and I can't say it was the most enjoyable experience, but it was very pretty while I was dying.
Yeah. You also die of nice scenery.
Oh, that was it. Yeah.
The best way to die, you know what I mean? I feel, but yeah, it's in Cornwall. Works it's like a bird sanctuary. We won't say the name of the bird sanctuary because then obviously people could look at that. But
there's probably a lot down that neck of the woods, though. I would have thought bird sanctuaries.
There's a few down there. Yeah, this particular one is quite a big issue, a well-known one. And what he was saying is that it's to do with birds of prey. He looks after birds of prey, this chap at the sanctuary. But part of this job is to go around the local... There's like an area they're protecting sort of like birds of prey, you know, like a conservationist kind of thing. So as well as he looks after... They've got ones they keep there in the sanctuary. Do you know what I mean? These birds of prey they look after. But there's also like the local areas where there are nests. They go around and keep a check on them. And what they do is they check in case people are nicking eggs from them. They check the breeding patterns. Yeah, and stuff monitor like this.
the annual kind of how many chicks are born every year and stuff for the more sort of not endangered species, I suppose, but ones that are on the decline.
Yeah, like the indigenous sort of birds and wildlife in the UK. You get that, people do it with trees and stuff like that as well. And it's become more of a recent thing where a lot of that happens, where people keep an eye on stuff and they check the soil and all this kind of stuff. And this chap goes around checking nests to make sure that the things, the breeding patterns are happening and that people are not stealing the eggs or they're not being pilfered around with and stuff like that. It's almost like protecting them.
Yeah.
And the email said he looked into this. I think it's a peregrine falcon nest, is what he said.
Yeah, he climbed the tree.
Yeah, climbed up the tree.
Yeah, and was doing his usual, with his notebook or whatever he's got up there, and climbs up the ladder or however he gets up, and he looks into the nest. And what does he see, Freddie, in the nest?
Well, what he sees is a very small, what appeared to be a human skeleton, or parts of it. You know what I mean? At first, he thought it was like a bird skeleton, like a bird had died there and it had rotted away. Do you know what I mean? Or something. At first, he thought it was an animal skeleton. So, but it looked human. He said that the head looked like a very tiny human, smaller than a baby, almost like fetus size.
I think from the images we've got, he's got for a size comparison, he took a photo of a 5p piece next to it, and the head or the skull, which looks like a human skull. There's no other animal that has a skull like a human, well, apart from a monkey. But this size, it's like a 5p piece size human skull.
Yeah, it's tiny. It's and it's smaller than. The thing is, it could be. You could be like a fetus or something like this. Do you know what I mean? And first, you think it could be like a human fetus or something. And there's parts of it are missing. So there's almost like a bird has been eating this.
Yeah, you've got the skull with the lower jaw missing, the spine, the rib cage, and then the pelvis is missing, and the legs are missing, and there's a couple of bones which look like they could be possible parts of the arm and the shoulder blade. But there's also another section of spine which looks the same as the one that's connected to the skeleton, which would indicate probably there was maybe one or more of them, so two maybe. But he was in a bit of a rush to get whatever was in the nest out. He didn't want to disturb anything, but he didn't want to leave what he'd discovered in there in the nest. So he just gathered it up and put it in a small sample bag. And as it happens, he is he's a listener to the show, and he's followed Freddie before through his various TV routes, and it just so happens that, obviously, my connection with fairies and stuff, we seemed the perfect people to divulge this information to. Yeah,
and what he said initially was that he is under the impression that it's like a fairy, it's a Cornish Piskie or Pixie. Yeah. And because there's a sort of folklore in Cornwall, they're like tiny little elf type thing, little pixie things, and they're supposed to be helpers in the woodland, and there's been sightings of them over the years. It's been quite strong in the sort of local culture around there. Yeah. Even if you go into any shop there, you can get buy little Lucky Charms, Cornish Piskies. And
they're very popular. They look a little bit like Puck of Puck Hill out of Midsummer Night's Dream. They're like usually sitting cross-legged with pointy boots on, and
or a tiny Yoda, really.
Yeah, like a tiny Yoda. But he can't think of any other explanation for what he found in this nest to be anything else other than the remains of a Cornish Piskie or Pixie, whatever you want to call it. And it's definitely got us baffled, because we've been batting the photograph backwards and forwards over, for a number of days now, and I don't know. It's
weird.
It's one of those things that I don't know. It's hard for me to get my head around, because obviously I did the whole mummified fairy hoax 8 years ago. So to see something. It's a lot smaller than the mummified fairy, though. It's tiny. If it was a human skeleton in its entirety, it would probably be like the size of if you stood a biro pen upright. That's how big it would be. But what we're going to do is, he's actually given us permission to release a couple of the images. But we can't, obviously, we can't say who he is or what sort of organisation he works for. But we will tweet a photograph out. And by the time you listen to this show, one of those images should be up on our Twitter feed, so you can go and have a look for yourself. We'll put it on the Facebook page as well.
Definitely. And the weird thing about the whole thing, his initial queries was the reason why he contacted us. Number one, because you're known for the mummified fairy, and he knows who we both are. He wanted to check whether it was a hoax, or whether you would be involved in it, or whether you knew someone that would do it, or whether it's a fake, like a prop.
Like hoaxers have an underground network throughout the country.
And if someone's done, like you've done things like that before, if someone's done something before, they can look at something, see if it's made from materials or whether it's a fake thing. And also myself, because I'm my interest in the paranormal, and I work in the paranormal area, and I'm interested in stuff like paranormal and strange things, folklore and culture. It's looking at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah.
But we looked at the pictures and in depth, and like obviously, Dan, you've had work and experience with forensic and this kind of stuff.
Yeah, they're good photographs. They weren't taken with his mobile phone or anything. They were taken with a DSLR camera, so they're good quality. So you get like a good amount of detail on there. And as far as I can tell, I can't think of. Well, there isn't any animal in the British Isles that has a human skull the size of a 5p piece and a spinal column and rib cage the same as a human being. It's it's in terms of cryptozoological creatures, it's the only thing it can ever really point to is something from folklore or so fairies or pixies or whatever.
And he swears he feels it's a Cornish Pixie, doesn't he? But it looked like it could be a human fetus. But where would a peregrine falcon get a human fetus from?
It's not a human fetus, though, because the skull is completely different from a human fetus skull. It's like an adult. This is an adult skull, but miniature. So
figures have a soft part on the top where it hasn't formed over properly.
They do, and it's formed, isn't it? It is, and that the head itself is sort of. You obviously got a bigger, the top part. I can't think of the technical name for it, but a fetus skull looks more alien-like if you're going to look at it. The huge eye sockets, and the rest of the small features, and obviously the big sort of brain cavity area is huge. Whereas this is a miniature adult human skull. The thing is as well, what I thought when I first looked at the pictures were they look old. They don't look like a fresh kill. So
it's been there a while, hasn't it?
I don't know. It's one of these things that if you look at it from a perspective that it's not a hoax, then and these peregrine falcons, they nest in the same locations every year, don't they?
Yeah.
So maybe 2 or 3 years ago, this falcon went out hunting and saw something in the grass, swooped down, picked it up, took it back to the nest, picked it apart, the chicks ate it, and the bones have remained in the nest ever since, and they've obviously become weathered and old and fallen apart slightly. But, I don't know, it's like...
To be fair, and without having the sort of, the fear of ridicule, to me, it's genuine. I can't see anything about it that looks fake, or it looks genuine to me.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking at them now, and if I was to describe it to the listeners now who've not seen it on the Twitter feed yet, but obviously go to the Facebook page and the Twitter feed, because by the time this podcast goes out, we'll have posted the picture. Is put it in what looks like an utterly butterly tub or something. It's like a yellow tub, and the head is still connected to the spine and the rib cage, but the rest of the little bits, I don't know if the other bits, like the arm sections, to me could possibly be off a mouse or something. They don't look quite human, but the ribs and the spine connected to the head, they do look of human origin. And then you've just got a few bits of dirt and stuff in there. I mean, it's got me kind of baffled, and it's not the sort of thing you wake up in the morning and expect someone to send you photographs of the remains of a ripped apart fairy in a bird of prey nest. It's very strange.
It's very strange, and we got an email because he didn't want any pictures. He wanted our opinion on it, but when we spoke to him, he's agreed. He emailed me back today and said, yes, you can put the pictures up. We'd like to hear what the viewers' thoughts are, or the viewers, listeners, sorry, because you can't see us, can you? Unless you've got some sort of remote viewing skills. But yeah, what the listeners think of it. Do you know what I mean? And retweet it and see what people say, because it is very strange and it's really weird. It's very odd.
You always get these things come out every year, though, don't you? I mean, when you get spring is coming around, and obviously you've got April Fool fast approaching, so you kind of approach these things with a little bit of caution, especially, I don't know, I'm probably more sceptical now than I've ever been. However, when I've done these fairy festivals, like the Llangollen Fairy Festival, and people know who I am and I've given my lecture, the amount of people who do come up to you and sort of divulge stories and information that they've never been comfortable sharing with anyone else. They come to me and let me know, their stories, because they feel they can tell me comfortably without me laughing at them. Because fairy folklore, as we all know nowadays, it's ridiculed across the board. It's just something that's fallen by the wayside and no one believes in anymore. So, obviously now Disney have taken the reins with things like Tinkerbell and, films like Epic and that. It's just become like a little thing that little girls supposedly believe in. I mean, all the radio interviews I've ever done regarding the mummified fairy, the radio interviewers have always done it with a little bit of tongue-in-cheek. You know what I mean? It's always the introduction like, "Oh, have you found fairies at the bottom of your garden?" and all this, and they do it with a certain amount of ridicule. So in that respect, I can see why Freddie and I would be the best people to approach if you'd found anything along those lines, because we're not going to be the ones who blatantly sort of rip into you and take the piss on radio stations or in the press.
Exactly, we're going to be very open about it. First we thought, is someone trying to get one over on us, or trying to do a wind-up, but I don't think they are. This bloke seems sincere. He's just not a sort of person that you would imagine would really believe in pixies and stuff like that, but he seems so convinced by it.
Well, we've sort of battered a few emails backwards and forwards with him, and he seems pretty genuine. He's obviously he's a conservationist. He's outdoors a lot. This birds of prey centre that he works for, and I think the main thing with hoaxes, other than to be responsible for fooling the public, they usually have an ulterior motive, either some form of publicity to advertise something, which in this case, because he doesn't want any connection with the press, that's not the motive. There is no motive other than, he's found something very strange, and the only people he felt comfortable showing it to was Freddie and myself, which we're thankful for, to be honest, because otherwise I don't think anyone else would have put this out.
Yeah, but I think we're the only people that would really sort of look at it in a sort of more open way. Do you know what I mean? I mean, you get people that are either would believe it completely and say, yeah, that's a fairy or Cornish Piskie, as you're saying, or there'll be people that dismiss it and say, no, that's nonsense. Yeah, but we're more in between. We're more open to things, but we're not completely dismissive of them at the same time. Do you know what I mean? We're not fooled by it, or to take things at face value.
Yeah, your brain kind of goes off on one when you think about it, though, how whatever that is came to be in that nest, you know.
I've looked at them. It's just so weird. And I can't see any signs of it being. You know, I've seen models and stuff like that before. You know, but it doesn't to me look like it's any way fake.
No, I mean the skull is kind of slightly knobbly. I've like looked as closely as I can at it, and it's got, you know, small kind of. It's just the tiniest human skull you've ever seen. It's in proportion with the rest of the body. It's not oversized. You know, when some people draw, say, a Cornish Piskie, it's done in a kind of leprechaun style. The head is always far too big for the body, and it's got quite a sort of skinny body. But this is almost like a to scale, in proportion, human remains.
Yeah. And the thing is with it, it's like, because the pictures are such good quality, you can zoom in and have a really good look at it. Whereas with things that are more vague or blurry, sometimes you get photos of like Loch Ness Monster or something, and it's so blurry and indistinct, you can't be sure because it's not got the clarity there. Because this is with because the thing is with modern technology, like modern cameras, they're so much better than they were years ago.
Yeah. So
when you see the old photographs of like ghosts, Loch Ness Monsters or odd things, sometimes it's hard to work them out because of the quality of the picture, because these are so sharp. And he's using a state-of-the-art camera, it looks like here.
Yeah.
You know, we can zoom in and look at it completely in depth, do you know what I mean? It's almost as if it's in front of us. And, yeah, it looks real to me.
I mean, I'm I mean, Cornwall's a bloody long way away for anyone to drive. It's off the beaten track, especially if you live sort of, you know, to the east where we are. Getting across the country, you can get up and down the country, no problem, but getting across it is a pain in the arse.
Yeah.
But I'm so excited about these pictures. I literally want to jump in my car now, and I'd want to drive to Cornwall, see the guy, shake his hand, and then I'd want him to take me to where this nest is.
Yeah.
But however, they can't legally. They're not able to tell people where the nests are. So that's not a possibility. I mean, I don't know, maybe he would. He'd trust us enough to take us out to where the nest is, but I'd want to climb up there. Things that I would want to have a proper ferret around. I'd want to have a proper look in that nest to see if there's anything else. Is this a one-off? Or, you know, if you dig around underneath all of the feathers and eggshells and, you know, remains of other things in there, are there more in there? Is this something that, I don't know, is it a regular sort of tasty treat for your average peregrine falcon? Do they eat pixies and fairies on a regular basis? It's like, I mean, if you think about it as well, where are you least likely to find the remains of creatures like this if they exist? You're not going to find them scattered around on the woodland floor. If birds of prey, for example, are eating them, they're going to be up in the trees hidden away, and they're going to stay up there for, well, until they're discovered by some random chap who's checking on numbers of eggs. Yeah,
and we're going to put the pictures up on Twitter and on Facebook so people can have a look at it. You know.
Yeah, and feel free for any listeners, feel free to retweet and send them on and see what anyone thinks. I think without being a Mystic Meg, I can tell which route it will go down. It will just get ripped apart. On the, you know, people will look at it and they'll say, that people, they fall into two categories. A very usually trolling type non-believer, or the believer who, will agree that that's what it is.
Yeah, without question, yeah. So there'll be no sort of, we're trying to find a middle ground here, because as much as the thing is I want to believe it's real, that there are pixies and things like this around. But your common sense tells you that maybe there isn't. Do you know what I mean? There should be more proof of it. But then, now we've been given this and we've both looked at it. It's thrown me, to be fair.
It does need looking at by a professional body, really. The bones need to be analysed to make sure. They need to be examined to make sure that they are actually, the same composition as. Bones essentially, and they're not anything else. But I can't think of anything. I mean, I'm a prop designer, and to create something that detailed and that small and that realistic would be relatively difficult. And your average Joe isn't going to know how to go and produce something like that straight away. And
No, and the thing is, you think about it though. If someone is making it as a fake or a hoax, they've gone to a great extent, right, to create this, right, with such fine detail.
Yeah. And
then they've climbed up, well, from what I gather from what you're saying, a very high tree. Do you know what I mean?
But fair dues, that's part of his daily job, though, isn't it?
Yeah, but no, the hoaxer, I mean, if
the hoaxer,
if someone's making a hoax, they've gone to the extent of climbing that tree. I mean, he's got a ladder that he carries with him, so the person who is a hoaxer must have took a ladder with them to this tree to go all the way up into a bird's nest to put this in there, and it may not even ever been discovered.
Yeah.
Surely if it was a hoax, they'd left it in a more prominent place. Or
I don't think they even use ladders, do they? They use those like ratchet type rope things, like almost like a rope climbing line. So in order to get up, one, the location of the nests is kept secret, so people don't go and disturb them. And two, getting up into the tree would be very difficult. So, yeah.
I was saying, if it's a hoax, though, if you're in a hoax, you put it somewhere where it could be discovered, like where a dog walking path, or someone with a dog, you know what I mean? Or somewhere more prominent. You wouldn't put it that out of the way.
No.
Because if you've gone to the amount of time and effort to make something that detailed, you wouldn't put it really high up in the tree where it may never ever be found.
No.
That's what seems strange about it to me. If it was a hoax, you wouldn't go to that extent. If you're doing a hoax, you'd leave it somewhere where you know that someone's going to find it. You wouldn't put it that high up in a tree. Yeah.
But what we've asked for him is, if possible, is he able to send us some video footage of the remains? So we've said, just film it if you want on your iPhone and send it across to us, just so we can see moving images of it as opposed to still images. I've looked at the images and I don't think they've been photoshopped in any way. However, to see a moving image with him possibly, pointing things out or just placing a ruler next to the images or the actual skeleton itself, just to give some indication of its size and that it's an actual physical object and it's not been tampered with, I think will, for us, make it even more of an amazing find than ever.
Definitely. And if you can do that, then it makes it even more so. And like with the pictures, I'll tweet some of them later on. And what I want to do, if anybody out there is quite whiz on photo, knows a lot about Photoshop or anything like this, have a look at the photographs, and if you can see anything, I don't know, maybe there's giveaway lines or something like this. If you see anything, or just let me know if you feel, just analyse them yourself and have a look at them. And if you feel that there's, you can see anything there, if it's been Photoshopped, let me know. But it doesn't look like it to me from what I can tell. I'm not an expert in that kind of thing, but if someone is very adept at that, have a look at the photographs, just see what you feel about it and what you think of it. It'd be nice to know your opinions.
Yeah, like, was it like wearing clothes originally? That's what I was thinking. So like, if you go into this nest, if you ever dig around, are you going to find like little shoes and a little tunic and a little hat with a feather in or something? It's like
yeah. Well, at the bottom of the tree is there like a hole in a tree, like a doorway, and there's like all the pixies live inside the tree or something like that, or a warren. I don't know what they call it, a burrow, a warren. I don't know what pixies live in.
Well, I suppose they're meant to live in like old earthworks, like barrows and stuff, left behind from the Iron Age, essentially. Holes, basically hills, hollow hills. That's that's where they supposedly sort of hang out. But it's a magical and very intriguing case from a very sort of magical part of the UK. As Freddie said, you've got the whole Arthurian legend base there. You've got Somerset, Devon and Cornwall, those, you've got Avalon, Tintagel, Dartmoor. I mean, I had a strange experience on Dartmoor when I was actually doing my basic training. I can't remember if I've told you about this, Freddie, but
no.
All over the UK, there's what's known as ABCs roaming around, which stands for Alien Big Cats.
Oh yes.
And these are essentially they're cats which they're cryptozoological anomalies. They're creatures that do exist but shouldn't exist in our current sort of environment. And I think where it stems from, I think it was during I can't remember if it was the 40s or 50s, but the government brought in new legislation to say that anyone who owned big cats, because you used to get a lot of very rich families they'd keep things like pumas and jaguars and stuff as pets.
You could buy exotic animals. I remember a shop in Harrow that had like chimps and toucans in there and little baby leopards and stuff like that. And this is in the 80s. It must have been the 80s that they bought the licensing in, because that's when I went to that shop. Yeah. It's gone now, but yeah, it's around that time, I thought.
Because what happened is people couldn't afford the licenses, because obviously the licenses were put in place to deter people from ever wanting the animals in the first place. So people just let them free, thinking that, they'll go out and they won't be able to survive. But I think back in 2012, a policeman in Glasgow, I think it was Glasgow, or up in Scotland, was down by a railway track, and he was a dog handler, and his dog started going nuts, and he had his camera with him, and out of the bushes came this, basically a panther, or a puma type creature. It was about the size of, if you look at the images, you can go on YouTube and see the images. If we can find them, we'll put them on the Facebook page. But this creature is about the size of I would say like a decent sized dog, like a Labrador type size. Yeah. And it's walking up the train track, and it's there in plain daylight walking up the train track. So there is proof that these creatures do exist. But when I was on Dartmoor doing my basic training, we were taking sort of 2 hours about to do an armed duty. So it was all in tents. But we was in there's a compound in the middle of Dartmoor, which is what the armed forces use, because obviously there's weapons there and everything. So it's where they keep all the kit to do all the exercises. So it was my turn to be on duty, and it was probably I was going on the 2 o'clock watch, so I was doing 2 till 4. So I got up, did my handover. I was handed my weapon, which at the time wasn't loaded. It was only, it was only given blanks. Yeah. But you had to have a weapon anyway. And there was like a long drive that goes to the main gates, and either side it's all like, really quite thick woods. And I walked up, and I was on my own. It was pitch black, and from the bushes, literally about, I would say maybe 10 feet away, I heard a proper, it was almost like a leopard or a jaguar, and they go wow, like that, but like, when you go to the zoo and you hit like how deep it is when they growl, you've got like a growl afterwards, like that, like that, but they're like the rumble, and I thought, what the hell is that? Yeah. Actually, I didn't think hell. I actually thought, what the, but to keep it clean for the kids, I'm not going to swear. But I heard it, as clear as day, and it was very, very close to me, and it was in the bushes, and there was something there, and I've no doubt in my mind it was one of those cats, because I've never heard anything like that in my life other than when I've been at the zoo. And I kind of backed away, and I walked back down the drive, and I had a bayonet and stuff. That was the only thing I'd have to protect myself at the time. But I think it's probably because I smelt so bad it didn't go for me. So it probably thought I was carrying. I'd not bathed for about 3 weeks, so I think it left me alone. But I didn't tell anyone either, because I think everyone would just take the piss. No one would believe me.
Well, that's the thing with that.
And I wasn't that familiar at the time with ABCs. I was 17. I'm not really knowledgeable at the time with things of that nature. So I just didn't know what it was. I just thought, Jesus, there's like a big... I'd seen American Werewolf in London, but this was like a cat version. And I kind of left it at that. I just put it down to maybe a dodgy ration pack and not enough sleep. So...
It's funny because animals, like wild animals, can breed in the UK climate, and that's what I say. The big cats, they say it's a lot of these pets that were released. Like, say, when licenses came in, they just released them because they couldn't be bothered to pay for the license or look after them anymore. Yeah. It's less sinister, but like where I live, not far from where I live, it's Pinewood Studios. Where they filmed Star Wars there, James Bond and stuff like this. Yeah. And I think it was in the 40s or 50s. There's a film called The African Queen with Humphrey Bogart, I think, and Lauren Bacall was in it. And they got in a load of parakeets. They're like big versions of budgies, for this scene. It's like as they're going down a river in this boat, they had these birds in the trees tweeting. They were like parakeets, but they were African parakeets, apparently. And a lot of them escaped. And since then, they've bred, do you know what I mean, all around this area. So I can there's a park over the road from me. If I go in that park, I can see they're like little miniature parrots flying about, which aren't indigenous to the UK.
But they're there anyway.
But they're there anyway, and all around this area, all around the Pinewood area, you see sort of these parakeets that have lived here for like sort of 50 years or so. Do you know what I mean? 50, 60 years, and they've bred since that time, and it all comes from that film, The African Queen. So, if something like an exotic bird like that can breed in the UK climate, then I'm sure like a jaguar or a cougar could do the same.
Yeah. I don't know. I got a kind of feeling it was like maybe a puma or something like that. It's, no one's ever found the remains of one. I think that's what the big thing is, though. But if you go out into the wild, like into Canada, you never really come across dead bears. You don't find a bear that's died of natural causes. Animals go, if they know they're going to die, they go to a place of peace to die, so it'll be somewhere hidden. Like, yourself, if you've got a sick pet, like if you've got a sick dog or a sick cat, they'll generally sort of go and find a really quiet corner of the house and they'll curl up in a ball and they'll stay there till like they either die or get better. So I think that's why you never find these creatures out in the wild, because they're in places where humans don't go, essentially. If you look at the Highlands of Scotland, the majority of that, there's some places there where humans have never even set foot. So...
it could live there. Animals could live there. Even if like an animal that's used to hot climate, you know what I mean? If it can live in the UK, then the big cats definitely can. They just adapt to it. Yeah,
and I suppose they are naturally, even though they are predators, they are going to be more scared of a human being, especially if you've got, say, like a squad of, say, 20 lads running towards you, sweating, running across Dartmoor. They're not going to come out and say hello, are they? They're going to stay well hidden.
Exactly.
Same again if you've got a group of 20 OAP hikers bimbling around, eating Werther's Originals and drinking tea out of a thermos flask. They're still going to hide. They're not going to pop out and rip you to bits.
No, exactly, unless they feel threatened, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Talking of weird stories of animals, and all this is slightly related, this is a story that stuck in my mind because I read it in the newspaper years ago, but there was no follow-on from it. And this happened in London. It was somewhere like Hackney or Brixton or something like that. This guy was asleep in his bed and he heard someone moving in his room at night.
Yeah.
And he jumped up and he switched the light on. There's a chimpanzee there with a bum bag on. Them, or I suppose the Americans, for Americans, it's a
fanny pack.
Right?
A fanny
and
pack.
He's putting this guy's phone and his wallet and stuff in this bum bag thing, right? And the bloke sort of got, it's a chimpanzee. And the window was open and this chimp just jumped out the window and went and shot off down the street.
Fucking hell.
And there's a big story in the news about it. And they're trying to find out where it come from or track it down. But there was some sort of visiting circus or something like this. And they reckon that although this chimp wasn't in the show, apparently he used to be in the show years ago. And he was trained to do stuff. Because of animal rights, you can't really have performing animals. So the bloke who travelled with this sort of circus still kept him as like a pet.
Yeah.
But he trained him to nick stuff.
Ah.
To burgle houses. So that whatever area they're going, he'd break into a house. He knew how to break. And there's no bloke with him or waiting. He looks out the window. There's no one down the road waiting for him. But he was trained to go in a house where the window was open, so it's a hot night.
Yeah.
Climb in there, grab, and he's trained to pick up certain things, put him in his bum bag and hop off out.
You'd soil yourself, wouldn't you? If you woke up in the middle of the night and there was a chimpanzee at the end of your bed, basically with a bum bag on, nicking your things, I don't know.
You'd go mental, wouldn't you?
I'd be more afraid of that than seeing like a cloven hoofed like Satan figure at the end of the bed. Monkeys scare the hell out of me. I'm not that keen on them, to be honest. I know you love them, but Jesus, I think the thing is, they're a bit iffy.
They can be erratic though. I mean, when I've got my best friend was a chimp, because it's a really weird story. This is I had relatives in Wales.
Yeah.
And down the road there was a bloke. He had this house, a massive garden, but it was covered over with like a netting thing, like a mesh sort of thing over the back garden.
Yeah.
And I used to say to Estevie, what's in this garden? I thought you had like a swings and slides in there or something like that. It sounded a bit nonsense now, but I said, what's that house? And they said, he used to work at the zoo. Well, and he was like a zookeeper, and the zoo closed down. This is in the 70s, before there was all this licensing going on. And he said that they could take an animal home with them, right? And he was really he had a chimpanzee, right? Yeah. And if you look at the window, occasionally he waves out the window at you, this chimpanzee. And I used to go there for days and look, and nothing happened, And one day, this chimp waved out the window, right? And he had like a school uniform on, like a hat and everything.
That's a bit creepy, like Jimmy Cranky.
Yeah, like that.
But in monkey form.
Jimmy Clifford sort of thing, And it's like an old style. And anyway, I said to my relatives there, I said, can I go and see this monkey, And they said, well, he's a nice bloke, ask him, he might let you go around there. So, my nephew, he really likes animals, monkeys and all this sort of stuff. Can he meet, I think his name Charlie or something like this, So, he came in and went through his house, and in the back, his back door was locked really like Fort Knox. He had this massive garden, it's all set up like an adventure playground, really. And this chimp lived there. He had like a little Wendy house thing that you could go in, like a small house. And he had like food in there and stuff like the chairs and stuff like that. And he's just like a kid. It's just basically, it's like playing with a kid who's a bit backwards.
Yeah, yeah.
And this chimp would run in the house and come back out with like 2 Mars bars, one for me, one for him, and stuff like this, and kick a ball about and climb up stuff.
And that is the story. That's the story behind. I've always wondered why you like chimpanzees so much.
Yeah,
and that is the reason.
But it was quite kind. It's like if he had some food, he'd share it with you. He'd break a banana in half and all that. Because I think he was happy to have some. Because I was a kid, I was probably the same height as him.
Yeah.
So I probably looked like a chimp who'd had a shave. Do you know what I mean? So, but every summer I used to go there. I used to go. I'll go and play with Charlie. Go around Charlie's house, and this chimp would be there for hours with him.
That's a great way to describe yourself. If you're like, for listeners who've never seen you, you look like a shaved chimp.
A shaved chimp, yeah. But this chimp, I don't know what happened to him in the end. I don't know, he might even still be living there on his own. The bloke might have died. The chimp might be running the house himself. But so yes, they've been there. But it's in the 70s. It's about 6 or 7 summers when I was young. I used to go and sort of play with Charlie the chimp, And it's very, very friendly. He was. It's like a child who couldn't speak, like a mute child. He was a little bit simple.
Yeah.
But he was very, and I had no aggression from him or nothing like that. Do you know what I mean? He was just very hyperactive, very funny, So
yeah, that's amazing.
That's why I like him. I befriended him, I suppose,
Yeah, that's great. That's been one of my story highlights of the whole of the podcast. I've always wondered what your obsession with chimpanzees was, and now I know.
Well, things they used to be around a lot years ago. I mean, they were like general like people, because I remember going years ago to Chessington Zoo, and now it's Chessington World of Adventure. It's all like rides and stuff. It used to be just a zoo, and they have this train. I think it's still there. It goes around the whole top of it like a little train, and you sit on this train and you go around it. And basically in the 70s when it had a chimp conductor. Yeah. So there's a bloke with him, and this chimp would have like a hat on and all this, and he'd have like them old ticket things you get at the bus, and he'd press a button and a ticket would come off.
Yes.
And you'd hand the money to this chimp and he'd give you the ticket. And he's obviously trained to do it, but he'd sit in the front of the train as if he was driving it. I think it was an automatic thing, so he'd pretending to steer it and that, but he'd turn around, and every time the bloke would nudge him, he'd turn around and wave at everybody. As this chimp would take your tickets. But I've been to a few of their tea parties. Yeah. As well. Like they used to go to holiday camps, they used to bring all the PG Tips ones there. And you could sit at a table with them and have dinner and stuff like this. So, years ago they were around a lot, And people say it's cruel having them but they seem to enjoy themselves. They seem like a good laugh,
Well, they're so closely related to us, aren't they? I suppose they are going to enjoy it, essentially. I mean, there's parts of the human race, our sort of species that live in the jungle and live pretty much like chimpanzees and vice versa. So I think, there's probably some truth in the fact that it's not entirely cruel, and if they're brought up like that, they probably enjoy it.
Definitely, and I've got no problem with them. I haven't sort of mixed with them. So I used to go to these sort of parties that have, like these Chimps tea parties, you have to put your name down for them and that. And I go back to school and think, these kids are boring compared to them. These lot are mental, they're a good laugh,
Yeah. I'm not into giving them electric shocks, though, to make them dance. I think that's where you draw the line.
I didn't see anything like that, No. I did see him do a show once, like a play. It was like, you remember when PG Tips had them adverts with them, Mr. Shifter and all that kind of stuff?
Yeah.
The Removal Man. It was at the Ideal Home exhibition. And this was about 1975, and they had this show where they were coming, it's like clowns really, they come on like this, one of them came on with like a paint and decorator outfit, and he'd poured a bucket of water over another one, and then one came on with a little bus thing he was driving, like a toy bus.
Yeah.
And everyone pretended to be the conductor, got on the bus and rode around, and then there'd be a bit of slapstick stuff, but they were very well rehearsed. Either they were getting electric shocks to do things on cue, or they were very good actors who knew their parts perfectly. And at the end, you've got to have your picture taken with them, and you've got a free box of tea, the loose tea, not tea bags. So I met Mr. Shifter, one of my claim to fames.
Excellent. So, well, we went a bit off topic there from gone from fairies to chimps to
big cats to chimps, and anything goes, as they say,
That's it. So, as I say, we'll put the photos of the fairy up soon, and have a look, see what you think, and get back to us, and then we'll cover it again on the next show.
Yeah,
we're going to take a short break, and we're going to be back with you in a second.
This was the image which shocked a military policeman as he managed to capture the scenes on video. A large black cat seen prowling over a railway line close to his naval base. PC Swallow, a dog handler based at Faz Lane on the Clyde, thought he was seeing a Labrador dog crossing the tracks, but on closer inspection believed he was seeing one of the mysterious big cats which reportedly roam the UK. He'd run to his car to grab his mobile and caught the picture from the rail bridge, around 2 minutes of the animal moving up the line. Big cats have been seen in the area before, and looking at this footage, the naval base's pest control officer said he did not believe it's a domestic cat or dog. It's the latest of a long line of sightings, the most famous of those, the Beast of Bodmin, with various sightings reported since the early 1990s. The Big Cats in Britain group, which investigates animals roaming the countryside, say they're excited by the video, saying this could be one of the best pieces of footage of a big cat in the UK.
Hello, I'm sitting here with Dan Baines from, the Lebanon Circle and the Mystic Menagerie podcast.
That's correct. And I'm sat here with Oliver McNeil of Legends Photography.
And
the Fantasy
podcast. Thank you. Yes. That's okay. We're newer than you, Dan.
It's weird when you've got to do this interviewing each other at the same time business. It's I've never done it before. So,
no, neither have I. So this would be new. Yes. Well, this is going to be a little bit unusual. We're both in the sort of fantasy genre. You're slightly sort of darker than I am.
I am. Yeah.
But we first met when I found Dan. In the capacity of trying to find a way of creating real fairies.
That's right. Yeah, I had an effect out called the corpse candle, which was essentially shielded fibre optics on a fishing rod. So in a dark environment, you could give the impression of fairies flying around, which works really well on stage and in some sort of really low light.
Yeah, and that's where I saw it first, because I saw the Lord of the Rings musical.
Yes.
I think it was only on for about sort of 4 or 5 months. Quite a troubled production.
It was, yeah. That's where I got the inspiration from it.
And at the beginning, you saw it as well, did you?
Yeah. That's where I actually got the inspiration for it from, because I saw the hobbits trying to catch the fireflies.
That's it.
As the audience were being seated, they were running around with these nets, and I could see these little points of light flying around. I was thinking, how the hell do they do that?
It was beautifully done, wasn't it?
It was, yeah. And I could see these little rods coming out from amongst the ivy that was around the stage.
Yeah, and they had some beautiful examples of Pepper's Ghost as well on that.
They did, yeah.
They had the scene when Bilbo puts on the ring. I think they surrounded him with all the other hobbits, and there was a wreath. Do you remember?
I do, yeah.
He stood in the centre, and I presume they had the perspex, it must have been perspex with glass there.
Yeah.
And he just faded out. It was a beautiful effect.
It was very good. I mean, I was quite conscious because my son at the time was quite young and he was petrified throughout the whole thing. So I was unable to relax and watch the whole thing because I was too worried about how he was feeling, especially with the Gandalf, with the wind at that section at the end where I can't remember what happens with Gandalf.
The Balrog comes out.
The Balrog, that's it. Yeah, petrified. Yeah. Before the interval, yes. Like, are we going to have to go, or are we going to carry on and watch the second half? But we stayed, but it scared the crap out of him.
I'll quickly describe that for the listeners because it was probably the best theatrical effect I've ever seen. Essentially, the "You Shall Not Pass" moment from the film, the way they did it on stage. They had, I think it's probably a stilted man. They backlit him, so the light was coming right through, and a massive, probably a couple of big wind machines were standing behind him as well.
Yeah.
And they released thousands of little bits of black tissue.
That's it.
As the ash.
Yeah.
And just blasted with noise. Yeah, really, really good.
It was amazing. It was very tense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of crying children at that stage. But it was a wonderful production. As I say, the catalyst behind the corpse candle, which was amongst the bizarre magic crowd, was very popular. Limited in its use, but you could create some really unique effects with it. And I think that's essentially what attracted you, and you approached me and picked my brains about it.
Well, it was that, and also because I do fairy tale photography.
Yeah.
And I obviously fairies come into that, so that I came across you just by searching for fairy photographs. And
most people come across me if they search for fairy photographs.
And if you're not aware, Dan first came to prominence with the mummified fairy. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the Derbyshire Mummified Fairy was back in 2007. It was dubbed as an April Fool's hoax, but it was actually released after the 1st of April. It was about the 7th of April, I believe. And it was purely an art project that I did whilst I was working in forensics, because I worked for a private forensics company, so I was working in audio and video forensics, mainly counter-terrorism and things like that. So as you can imagine, the things you see on a day-to-day basis aren't particularly pleasant. So being an old art student, I started dabbling in art again, and for some unknown reason, it's one of those things when people ask you, where do you get the ideas from for what you do? I just don't know where they come from. For some reason, I made this mummified fairy. I think it's because I'd seen Fiji mermaids.
Yeah.
But I wanted to create something different. So I literally stole a toilet roll from work, took it home, got some poster paint, made some paper mache, covered this small anatomical skeleton in paper mache, which I got from the Wellcome Collection Museum facing Euston Station, put it in the airing cupboard, went there the next day and thought, wow, that looks pretty cool actually. It does look like a mummified fairy. So I stuck some wings on it, stuck some hair on it, and then using my sort of forensic background, took some photographs of it in that kind of environment. Got my wife to wear some rubber gloves, put some rulers around, and I had a selection of photographs.
And it hit the news as well.
Well, the main reason I thought, at first I thought, well, this would be great to do as an April Fool's hoax. So I had contacts in what was the news of the world, the Mirror, the Sun, all the really scummy tabloids.
Yeah.
That, they'll publish any old crap. So I thought, okay, they'll run with the mummified fairy. So I wrote them the story, sent them the photographs, saying this would be great for you to run with on April the 1st, and no one was interested. They were like, no, it's crap. We're not interested in it at all. So because I based the story in Derbyshire, I thought, well, the Derby Evening Telegraph will probably run with it. They've got to be short of news up in Derbyshire, haven't they? Sent it to the Derby Evening Telegraph again. Not interested in the slightest. Our readers won't be interested in anything like this. So I was kind of a bit disheartened. I remember sitting in front of the computer just before I was going to go to bed, and I'd written this fake story about how the fairy was found, and the police had put it in a biscuit tin and kept it all very kind of English countryside, almost like Last of the Summer Wine.
Yeah.
Primitive.
Come on for bumbling cops.
Yeah, bumbling cops. The policeman on the push bike type thing. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll send it off to America as a last-ditch attempt, thinking that if anyone's going to believe it, the Americans will. And they did, and they took it.
Hi, American listeners.
No kind of. It's just. I think it's just the cultural differences. We're a lot more sceptical, I think, in the UK. We've been around for a bit longer, and we tend to look at things and think, nah. But in America,
there's pockets, isn't there?
Yeah, there is pockets. Not everyone believed it, but as a whole. I sent it to the About pages, which is owned by the New York Times. I went to bed, woke up in the morning, and it had gone viral completely. It was in there, it was in the paper, my inbox was full straight away. And then that day, all the English tabloid papers started ringing me, saying, are you the guy with the mummified fairy? And I was like, I am, but I spoke to you last week about it. And they were like, no, this is something different. Are you the guy who's found this mummified fairy? And I was like, yeah, I'm the guy. So then I ran with it.
Yeah.
And it was a bit of a downward spiral. You get the initial interest from the fairy sort of fanatics, the fairy community, like the people I suppose you meet on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, most of my clients don't believe in it. They do,
but they're but the I wouldn't say the believers, but the people who, the Disney type people who like Tinkerbell and the flower fairies.
I have actually come across quite a few who do.
Yeah.
Certainly when I had the shop down in the old town of Hastings, I about once a month used to have some person would ask me whether I could do a tarot reading for them, which I don't do.
No.
And secondly, do I use real fairies?
Yes.
With all sincereness, and then they'd tell me about their stories about seeing fairies in their garden, and it's something I use during my shoots because people are susceptible as long as you, especially kids, if you tell them a good yarn, they're going to believe it. And I use a little bit of magic in my shoots. I'll do coin vanishes, and I'll lead that into a story about wishing coins and fairies taking them. And then with a couple of coin vanishes, the kids are totally believing in magic, and then you have the
sort of captured their imagination.
I'll do something like, I'll say, look, you see this flower here, and my studio's like a set of a woodland. If you put your hands next to a real flower and you cup them, and if you feel a little tingle in the palm of your hand, you can feel there's a fairy in them. And if you put that suggestion in the child's head, they will, because their hands will get a bit sweaty and feel a bit tingly, and then they'll connect to, and they will like, oh my god, there's a fairy. So it's I love using that sort of psychological influence in my shooting. And then the next time we met, you moved down to the sort of East Sussex, Kent area.
Yeah, I moved down sort of about 3 years ago now. So 2010.
And you were looking for some publicity shots, and you contacted me.
Yeah, well, I remember I kind of put two and two together. I went down to Hastings, which is the nearest beach, I suppose. It's only sort of 40 minutes drive, so I thought we'd go for a family day out, and there's all the quirky little shops down there, and I saw this Legends photography with fairies and knights, and I thought, that rings a bell. And I was like, definitely, I've heard from this chap before. So I came in and introduced myself, and it was like, we remember each other. And it was, from then onwards we've been in regular contact, and obviously asked you to take some photos for me, which have been used in every single sort of magazine that I've been in. They've been in Bazaar magazine, Magic Scene magazine.
Yeah, your Twitter face as well.
Yes, this. I've used them in nearly everything, and
that was a fun little shoot.
It was,
because what I like to do with all my clients, I do a few other magicians as well. I did Andy Nyman and Paul Daniels, and and I like to try and set the scene. So I'll find a location, and we were very lucky that down the old town of Hastings it's gone now, unfortunately. Can you remember the name of it?
It was called the Auditorium.
The Auditorium.
Because I went in, and obviously I don't think the owners will be listening, but they had a bit of marital issues, and I went in, and his mum was running it, and I was like, is such and such here, or such and such, and they're like, no, they've split up now, and I'm looking after it. And it was a shame, because it was an Aladdin's cave of taxidermy, and
they had bats on chandeliers,
bat skeletons, and
that's right, there were skeletons, weren't there, as well?
There was
weird foxes screaming, gorilla skulls.
It had everything.
They had I remember the armadillo basket. That was There's a few things I actually wanted to buy in there, but at the time, the main reason I sort of had my photographs done with you, because I needed to up my profile a bit, and I couldn't afford anything at the time, so I was in there thinking, which is why I went back, because obviously the photographs did pay off. They made me look, good for a change. Well,
and I didn't have any. It's difficult, and I think Bazaar performers will benefit from this as well. If you're a Bazaar performer, I mean, I'm not a performer, but I have like a persona that I have on, in the public eye. But as a Bazaar performer, you become a character, and if you are this character, then to evoke the kind of atmosphere and sort of put over what you're trying to tell your audience, it's good to have a good portfolio of photographs done. Otherwise, you get some really bad selfies, and the typical, as Freddie was saying, I think on one of the shows on the Mystic Menagerie, the guy who bought a trench coat, a top hat and goggles, but did card tricks, and all of a sudden was some bizarre steampunk performer. It doesn't really do it. You need to, and the photographs I've seen you do with Andy Nyman and Tom Baker, they capture that, and people automatically look at that and they think they know exactly what it's about.
It's really important, just to be boring, talk about social media for a minute, but you've only got a millisecond to capture someone's attention, and if you're doing something like Twitter or Facebook, and your little face pops up, it's got to tell an awful lot about you. And whether that person wants to follow you back or engage with you. And if you haven't got anything decent, it's been fading. And I've been working a lot with magicians recently, And part of my my challenge is to go away from that rather cheesy mind reading, pensive headache look, or the cards fanned out in front of you, or the crystal ball being held. These are just images that so annoy me, and you don't need any of that.
No.
If you look at the ones that did of Andy, he hasn't got anything magical in his. It's just all attitude. And I just found this really old pub up in London, and we just shot it, and they had some weird barrels, and I brought a massive great book out with me, and it's all about intent, really, isn't it?
It is,
creating the scene, which I love doing. I love all that. That's the theatre side of me, though.
It works. I mean, as you say, the typical magician photograph of the chap with his fingers on his temple, staring into a crystal ball, or it's so dated, and it puts a lot of people off. I think when they look at, see if you have a magic poster or you have a website, and that is the image.
Yeah,
it's been done a million times before, and people look at it and they think, it doesn't really look that magical. However, you always seem to find the locations and the sets, and also just wearing the right things as well.
Well, you've got to treat everything like a theatrical production. It's got to be lighting, it's got to be costume, props, scenery, the whole shebang.
Yeah.
And what I've been doing more of now, and you use video as well, is I tend to do them at the same time. So while I'm doing the shoot, I'll say, hey, let's do a little 30-second promo while we're at it.
Yeah.
And again, that can go up on Twitter and Facebook and all those kind of things, and then just draw people in. But let's change the subject, and let's talk about out on social media. Now, what are you working on at the moment? I mean, you've got various sort of Kickstarter campaigns. Obviously, you've got the Mystic Menagerie, which we're on probably now. And,
I spread myself pretty thinly throughout thinly through all things dark. So I've just completed 2 Kickstarters. I did an Edgar Allan Poe Kickstarter, which was 24 pieces of artwork, all inspired by Edgar Allan Poe titles, which you can actually perform a mystifying magic trick with, which was great. I did really well, and I'm actually gearing up for the next edition of that now, which is the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle edition. So again, 24 titles inspired by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, either short stories or books. So you've got everything. You've got the Coming of the Fairies, Conan Doyle's coverage of the Cottingley Fairy case.
Fantastic.
All of his work on spiritualism, Sherlock Holmes, all of his horror stories, like The Ring of Thoth and all that. There's just so much stuff. It's, to be honest, I don't know why I didn't cover him first, because I went with H.P. Lovecraft first, which was very niche. So the first edition wasn't that popular. The Edgar Allan Poe version was more popular, and I think the Conan Doyle one is going to be even more popular than that. And as a
he's probably not that well known for his horror writing, though, is he?
He's not, no. But he wrote more horror stories than he ever did Sherlock Holmes stories.
Did he?
Yeah, there's absolutely tons of them.
See, he did Jekyll and Hyde, didn't he?
No, he didn't do Jekyll and Hyde. No,
he did like some kind of. I remember reading some horror when I was at school.
Yeah, if you go on, just look at his bibliography and look at the amount of short horror stories he wrote compared to Sherlock Holmes stories and just essays and stuff on travel. It's a hell of a lot, and they're all quite dark and disturbing as well. And because of that as well, he's got a very good following of cult people. So. I've got people, Guillermo del Toro has agreed to autograph 10 copies of his favourite print or postcard. Fantastic. Same with Mark Gatiss from who co-wrote the Sherlock TV series. Yeah. He's going to be signing some. Reece Shearsmith, also of League of Gentlemen, and multiple other magic and horror related TV.
Who's on episode 3, is it?
He is, yeah. We've got an hour interview on our podcast. And also Jonathan Sadowski, who he He's a magician, but he's also a Hollywood actor as well. He was in Friday the 13th and the Chernobyl Diaries. And he's one of those chaps who, you don't know the name, but as soon as you see his face, you'll know him straight away. So I've got all these people sort of promoting it and backing it for me. And I'm just gearing up for that. It was meant to launch yesterday, but I'm just so busy. And as you know, Kickstarters are work vampires. You know, as soon as you start it, you will find yourself not sleeping for a month.
I haven't done one yet. I've been tempted, but I haven't quite found the project that I want to do it with. Oh, actually, I tried a few years ago, but it didn't. I wasn't prepared for it in the slightest. But I
think that's what happens to a lot of people. They just don't know. There has to be a following and a presence there, and almost like a marketing campaign before it even launches.
Yeah, that's it. It's right. Yeah. Part of the reason that podcasting and Twitter and all that is useful, to build that up.
I mean, Kickstarter itself, just a lot of my spare cash disappears into the Kickstarter pit, much to my wife's disgust, as it all goes on toys and games. But I don't spend my money on anything else. So,
well, one of the things I'd quite like to do. Well, there's several things that I'd love to do with Kickstarter. I think one of them is events.
Yeah,
and
you're big on your outdoor events and fantasy, obviously, and almost like Dungeons and Dragons type stuff.
Yeah, well, I used to. Well, there's several games that I used to play as a kid and a teenager, and one was Call of Cthulhu.
Yeah,
which I adored, and where my studio is now, which is next door to Bodiam Castle. Which, if you don't know where that is, and a lot of people don't know, if you have a look at the front cover of the Visit London book, it's the amazing sort of Norman, sort of moated, standard castle that you picture when you think of a Norman castle. And they've used it. They blew it up in Doctor Who as well. It's the one they had used in Robots of Sherwood. And I saw it the other day on I think it's season 4 of Nightmare.
Right.
And they used the outside of it and flew over it and used it as a dragon.
So you're lucky that your work's slap bang next to it.
Right,
and you live in Bodiam as well.
I live, very near it. Yeah. And also there's a steam railway. So it's set in the past, and where I am, there's also a glamping site, and they have all these shepherd huts that you can hire out.
Yeah.
So what I'd like to do is like a Call of Cthulhu style live role playing event.
Yeah.
But make it more theatrical. Make it more. We have a group of actors who are going to be there. A little bit. If you've never done live role play, this would be a bit more like a living theatre, I suppose. But using elements of magic, psychology, camping, storytelling. Effects, all kinds of fun things, and costume as well, because just down the road we've got a costume company with 3,500 costumes, period costumes, all types.
Amazing.
So everyone can get really into it.
It's become much more popular, not just live role playing, but I think one of the biggest live role playing things around at the moment, which people don't actually think they are LARPing, but when they do it, they are, and that is the zombie apocalypse events that you have.
Yeah,
which is LARPing essentially.
It is. Yeah,
get from point A to point B, while these people dressed as zombies are going to try and eat you.
Yeah, and they're not necessarily playing a character. That's the only difference.
I think on some of them they can do. It gets a bit sort of Walking Dead-ish, but you do get the ones where people just turn up and
you are you and you. But that's okay as well, because you're playing a different aspect of yourself.
Yeah, because there are some role-play games where you do play yourself. And I think Fantasy Flight have just brought out an apocalypse-themed one, which has got different scenarios, which is zombie apocalypse, post-nuclear war, alien invasion.
Funny enough, a friend of mine, a chap called Adrian Davis, who is a massive LARPer, he just posted up a picture of himself on Facebook, dressed in a Fallout outfit, and they're doing it's called, I think it's called something 57, Legion 57 or something. Okay. And I'll try and find, and he's got the gas mask on, and he looks totally, I'll try and find the picture. This might not be in the podcast, this bit. And that, again, there's all different types of live role play. Here we go. That's him.
All right, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So that's post-apocalyptic, where they've just taken it directly from the computer game. And
Yeah, the Fallout series.
Yeah. But I love Cthulhu, and I think that works perfectly in a fairly modern environment.
It works well for females as well, because you get to dress up in the 1920s type of dress, so they can be glamorous, they can be scientific, and I think it's an equal. I think something more fantasy based like Dungeons and Dragons is generally more male dominated. You know, I'm a paladin or I'm a cleric. I'm a wizard. There's the female roles within fantasy role playing aren't. I don't think are not as
there's a little
scope as
lot
there
of
is in
cliches
horror.
going on there. It's quite a sexist world, although it's getting a lot better. I mean, the LARPing event I went to for episode 3 of my podcast, half of them were ladies. Okay. I was really amazed, because when I started 20 years ago, that you'd be lucky to see one in a year.
Yeah.
But that
it's a bit like magic now.
Yeah, there was loads of couples, loads of kids. It's really all age groups. I was absolutely amazed. But another system I played, I did a game which I did 2 games, and it was trying to do live role playing in a real environment, and again horror based.
Okay.
And the way I did that, I found a location called Winchelsea, which had a real interesting history of a French invasion, and they had plague pits, and I think the entire village was rounded up during the French invasion, and they all burnt inside the cathedral.
Blimey.
So pretty horrific stuff going on. And I had a group of players, about 6 players, and they all were playing versions of themselves, but things that could be realistically interpreted and set. And I'd send them directions via text. And then I'd place people around this village who you wouldn't know they were playing.
Okay.
I asked the barman to have a few lines and tell them about local history.
Yeah.
We actually went inside the church when there was a carol service going on with a video camera, and just carried on in character, because we didn't have anyone dressing as a ninja or anything like that. We had someone who's like a paranormal investigator, so he just like he did, except he had a different cover. And then we went out into the fields. It was lashing down with the rain, and I just text the guy, have a breakdown because of this. You've something's basically run over your grave, and you feel terrible, and you lose the weakness in the strength in your legs. So you just collapse, started sobbing.
Yeah.
And everyone was, what's going on? And then I had things hidden in sort of old bits of brickwork and archways. So it's essentially a treasure hunt.
Yeah.
But that's
in a real world environment, so elements of it are drawn in, and
exactly. So you merge the two, and then the second time we did it, I took the video footage that the guy was shooting for the paranormal website, the fictitious paranormal website, and then edited in ghosts and seeds for the next part. And then we had to drive it to this guy's house because he hadn't turned up. I actually directed him, don't turn up.
Yeah.
We'll go and find you. And then we turn up and find that he's tied to a chair, I said, just make it look like someone's ransacked your living room, which was quite easy. He's got quite a messy guy anyway. And then we had to escape out the window, and so that kind of thing is great fun.
Yeah.
And quite hard to write, but I think there's a market in there for introducing people to LARPing and gaming that way.
There's definitely is a crossover. I would say out of a lot of my clients in Bizarre Magic, they all come from a background where they've dabbled in the past with, especially Lovecraft inspired roleplay games like Call of Cthulhu, for example. And I think as a point of character development, if you're going to be a mystery entertainer, most people just don't become a mystery entertainer. I wouldn't be a mystery entertainer as Dan Baines. Even though some people might think I'm quite mysterious, but I couldn't be my own character. I'd create a more interesting character. And there are right and wrong ways to create a character. You don't just watch one episode of Penny Dreadful and decide you're going to be I don't know. Everyone just goes for straight away Jack the Ripper type things. They're going to be a police investigator or a Jack the Ripper type character, and they just get it wrong straight away. But with Call of Cthulhu, I mean, a lot of the actual book itself is about developing your character. You know, the things that you're good at, the things that you're not so good at, the background that you have, where you studied, what your speciality is. You know, Egyptology, and you're good at cracking codes and all this. And you become, when you play it, it doesn't take long for you to become that actual character.
Yeah.
You know, you become that character for that period of time you're playing it.
Yeah, and it's certainly not a combat oriented. It's I think it's any sort of true horror storytelling game.
And you know, there's a high percentage chance that, you know, 2 games down the line that you're going to have to make a new character anyway, because you'll have either gone insane or died, which doesn't necessarily happen with other role-play game systems. You tend to keep your character for as long as you can, but with Call of Cthulhu, you don't tend to last very long, so you get a high turnover of all these interesting characters. And I think definitely for sort of listeners dabbling in the bizarre magic field, to get the best inspiration and information on the period, because bizarre magic generally covers the sort of the late 1800s, early 1900s, as Cthulhu by Gaslight, which is set in the 1890s as opposed to the 1920s. You know, and that covers absolutely everything. You know, what the highest form of suicide was during that period of time, and you know, what the British Empire was doing in different parts of the world at that time.
I used to get the source books and just read them. You know, I never actually play it.
It's amazing.
You know, because I was fixated on the 1920s style. Cause I always liked these sort of Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot, but I wanted it darker and much more Fu Manchu-like. So I used to just delve into it, and I had all the miniatures as well. And no, I just want to dress up like it now. Although, I'm halfway there.
I think the thing you're trying to do as well is to make it accessible straight away to the public.
Yeah, it is. That's a hard thing. I think a lot of people are put off by rules, and I've never been a big rule.
Yeah, you can't do that. Exactly. You know, you need to roll this D100 and
they just take it out. I enjoyed Dungeons and Dragons, but the moment that someone got the rule book out, hang on a second, let me just look at that, and 5 minutes later, I can't remember what I was up to now.
Yeah.
It's like it's completely
analysis paralysis.
Yeah, totally. It's like, you know, watching a stage show and then someone stopping all the action and getting the script out and just poring over it and saying, was that right? No. Yeah.
But in your sort of your part of the world, which is essentially my part of the world, Kent, which is, you know, the Garden of England, everything is oldie England and thatched cottages and castles, and you know, I think your idea of creating something that's instantly accessible in the right environment, where we do get the kind of decent weather for it as well in the summer, where people, it's almost like a festival type thing that you would get at a festival.
Well, the other thing that I'm trying to do is use real history and just slightly twist it, so that you're just not quite sure, but you can research and go, hang on, he did it exist. And I was telling you about this chap called Mad Jack Fuller.
That was it, yeah.
Did you look him up?
I didn't, no, but you can tell me all about him.
I'll tell you a little bit of that. Well, he owned Bodiam Castle for a little bit, but he was a politician, and he lived around, I think it was the 1800s or sometime like that. And he also, wherever Faraday was, because he financed Faraday as part of the group who helped a lot of scientists. But he was a lunatic, essentially. he buried himself. Well, he didn't bury himself, but he had himself buried in a pyramid in Brightling Church.
Okay.
And if you just look up, there's a huge, it's not a small one, it's a big pyramid.
I may have seen that before.
Yeah, you probably have seen it. But he built a lot of follies. He built a temple, which is just in the middle of nowhere, which apparently has a chamber underneath it, which was apparently for his wine and food that he stored, but I don't think so. Or he might have had orgies out there when he never married.
No.
He also has a thing called the Needle, which is like Cleopatra's Needle, which supposedly marks the highest point in East Sussex, or one of the highest points. There's also a tower which apparently it's because he wanted to keep an eye on all his workers in his lands, but it just looks like a Cthulhu tower.
Yeah.
And it's got nothing in it apart from a spiral staircase, and it's on top of a hill, and it looks brilliant. It's surrounded by little copse of wood. And then he's got another thing called the Sugarloaf. He is crazy with that. I don't know how long he lived, but the Sugarloaf he built for a bet. He also loved astronomy as well. So he had built his own observatory.
Yeah.
As you do. And when he was at home, he had some friends over from London, and he bet them that he could see the local church spire in Dallington. And when he sobered up and realised he couldn't, he just had it built, a replica built over the hill.
So he could see it.
So he could see it, yeah. So he could win the bet. Complete maniac. But the pyramid that he was buried in, the legend was that he was buried upright in his favourite chair with a bottle of whiskey with broken glass all around him, so the devil couldn't come and get him.
Strange.
Yeah.
So I suppose he's still in there sat like that.
Well, they did break it open in the 80s, and he's not there at all, so no one knows where he is actually buried.
Secret chamber.
But if you wanted to write a story around something, why is the temple there? Why has it got a chamber? What's the needle really about?
Yeah, where is it?
Why was he fascinated with the stars?
Yeah.
What's his real connection with Bodiam Castle? It's all there.
Yeah.
And it only takes a few nudges and a few people with overactive imaginations to make it very creepy. Because you could say, we'll have a burial site, and he put something in there, and it was protected by something from the castle. So
yeah, sounds amazing. Was his pyramid tomb? Was it the face like the northeast, southwest?
I'm pretty sure it did. Yeah, it's not hidden. It's right in the centre.
Yeah.
You see that before you see the church.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of scope in there for, as you say, obviously you've got the factual story around him, and then you're open to all sorts of fantastical interpretation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Dan, I'm conscious of your time. But what you're obviously working on quite a few things at the moment. You did show me the other day a goblin riding a weasel.
Yes.
Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah.
If you can.
Yeah, it's kind of. I've got so many pokers in so many fires, but I've always wanted to do a book on fairy folklore, but more traditional fairies as opposed to the 1920s sort of fashion fairies of the Cottingley fairy type of things. I wanted to go more back towards the medieval roots, and you probably remember a few years ago I actually was working on a book with Carlton Books about they approached me. They'd seen the Mummified Fairy, and they said wouldn't it be wonderful to do a book on fairies, but on traditional fairies, incorporating all the old folklore, all the scary stuff that they were up to. And it was great. They were fully on board with it, and we did some test spreads and we had like a dummy book made up which went to all the book fairs around the world, apart from it was doing very well until it went to America. And America being one of their largest clients, the Americans turned around and said, this stuff's too scary for kids, and its roots are too pagan, and as a result we wouldn't buy it. So they dropped me like a hot brick, and I was left with all of this material with nothing to do with it. So it's always been on the back burner that I wanted to create a book or some sort of photographic field guide to fairies, I think is the right word. And obviously with you being a photographer, I made a few props and asked you if you'd photograph them in the correct environment, i.e. the woods around Bodiam Castle where you live, and that's about as far as I've got with it at the moment, but it's always there in the back of my mind. As soon as spring comes, we've got a little bit of ancient woodland near here called Folhurst Woods, and I'll go in there and it's like another world, and as soon as I get into that environment the ideas start flooding back, and but it's
just finding enough time, isn't it, really?
It is time, it's one of those things. I remember when I was speaking to Guillermo del Toro about his ideas, he says he'll only ever get, at the most, 20% of all the ideas he's ever had will only ever get done in his lifetime.
Yeah.
The remaining 80 will never see the light of day. And you being a creative yourself, there's only so many hours in the day.
And budgets as well. When you're having to finance everything yourself.
Yeah, when you've got...
It's hard.
You've got obviously a social life and family and all the crap that you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis, like washing and sleeping and the really boring stuff that you don't want to do. It's got to the point now where I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning and I work throughout, and I work until I go to sleep, which is, sometimes it's not ridiculously late. I'm not rock and roll anymore, but still 10 o'clock you can still be working. And that's constant all day, every day, and I still don't get to do everything I want to do. But the fairy book is, I think, with the mummified fairy story itself and my interest in fairies and all the stuff I've done, it's one of those things that it has to be documented before I kick the bucket, so I can pass it on to my kids and they can pass it on to their kids. And,
I think we all want to write a book, don't we? We want to have some...
Yeah, I think I was listening to a very interesting... I listen to, obviously, a lot of podcasts, and there's a podcast on writing books, and they think that no one has a good book in them until they're 40. You have to have lived... You have to have done a good 40 years before you have the experience and the... I suppose the knowledge to sit down and write a good book. And now I'm 40 this year. Yeah. I see it as the green light. And sometimes I think, well, maybe if I sit down and write for an hour a day. And,
I think that's the thing. You just have to be incredibly disciplined.
And then spend 15 years editing it together.
You can get someone else to edit it for you.
Yeah, because obviously your work as well is very visual. There's got to be a point where you want at some point to collect all of your favourite pieces into essentially a book.
Well, actually, if you're probing, yes. Well, I'd like to do a book, but I'd also like. I've got a film in my head as well.
Okay,
I really like.
That is ambitious.
Yeah, it is. But I don't believe you need mega budgets now to do it. When you've got beautiful scenery and you can write the actual story around what you have at hand and the actors you've got at hand.
Yeah,
I think it's all doable now. There's been some. You can start off with a short film, and then if you get funding for it, if people enjoy it, you can get even further with it.
There's so many films on Kickstarter, that started off and they've become hits.
Well,
The Babadook, for example.
That's Kickstarter.
That was originally funded through Kickstarter. However, more money came from somewhere for it.
Yeah.
And it was one of the top horror films of last year.
Wow.
So, that just goes to show that if you get the public behind something,
well, I think
achieve anything.
With my style, because I try and do... I use very little Photoshop. I try and get everything, as I was talking about earlier, in costume set and lighting.
Yeah.
That's essentially what... That's how you make a movie.
Yeah.
So it's just getting a good narrative together, and I've got the basis for an idea, and I just wanted to be really English and very dark. I watched. I think you saw it the other day as well. The Watch in the Woods.
Yeah.
And you think,
a film that Disney wants to forget.
Yeah.
I think it was branded as.
Yeah.
That is, for saying it's a Disney film, that has got elements of. It's got occult rituals. It's got the same sort of camera shots that were used in The Evil Dead, with the spirit moving through the forest from a first person.
It's a crazy one, but it's such think of the shots; they're very easy to do.
Did you see the end? The alternative endings.
I did. Yeah,
the creature that came from a different planet.
Completely bonkers.
Crazy. Yeah, it's an amazing film, and when I go to Disneyland, I always say to my wife, "Why isn't there a Watcher of the Woods ride?" It would scare the hell out of
Betty Davis.
It would scare the hell out of people. It's that scene where Betty Davis is trying to rescue the girl she falls in the water and she gets caught underneath some tree roots.
Yeah,
and she's there, and you're looking from the girl's perspective under the water at this old lady pinning her down with a stick, and I think if you walked in at that moment when your children were watching that, and you think, what the hell are they watching? This is like, it's a horror film for children, essentially.
Yeah.
It's got.
Well, again, when I was talking to Ian, I'll quickly plug on your show. So far, we've done Tom Baker as our first interview.
Yeah, you've got the stars definitely on your show.
Yeah, well, a lot of people I've met, and I just emailed them back and said, do you mind if we have a little chat?
Yeah.
And Ian Livingston, who created Games Workshop and Fighting Fantasy, he had the similar thing that you had with the Puffin books, with the really graphic content of his book. You know, the Fighting Fantasy, the Blood Beast, and you've got these incredibly gory covers and graphic deaths. Scenes, and these are aimed for kids.
In the pit of spikes.
Yeah, it's a different time in the 80s, wasn't it?
But that's what made them so interesting. You know, I remember my next door neighbour used to buy me a Fighting Fantasy book every year for my birthday, and I've still got. I think it's over there. You can actually see the orange spine for it next to the Betrayal at House on the Hill. There's the first edition of the Citadel of Chaos. And, you know, I've read those when I was probably about 8, and you know, all of that stuff just fuels imagination, and nowadays our kids are just sheltered from the fantasy stuff, but subjected to the real horrors on the news and on things like Facebook every day. Now you tell me which is that the wrong way around?
If you just to put it in slightly different context, if you were thinking about playing a first-person role-playing game on the computer with the graphic content from the Fighting Fantasy, that would be an 18.
Yes.
Definitely now, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would, yeah.
Peggy 18. There's no way they'd go, yeah, suitable for 8-year-olds, that's fine.
Yeah.
And now, I don't know, how old are your kids?
I've got a 14-year-old and a 2 and a 4.
Yeah.
So, a bit of a spread.
Yeah. But, you know, when would you allow them to read books like that, the Fighting Fantasy stuff?
As early as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got no problem with my children wanting to read fantasy literature. Obviously, there's no sexual content in there. No. It's just pure fantasy. It's the same as the Harry Potter series. You know, when that came out, people, you know, there's more adults reading it than there was children. You go on the tube, everyone was reading Harry Potter, and they'd be saying, "Oh, I wouldn't let my children read this because it's a bit occult or it's a bit dark." But they've got to remember, when in our generation, you know, the BBC used to do so many adaptations of dark ghost stories, like The Children of Green Noah and The Moon Dial and books like this. They were all very creepy ghost stories.
Chalky, do you remember that one?
Chalky.
Chalky, yeah.
That was scary as hell. And, you know, the tripods and things, you just don't get it anymore because they're too worried about potential repercussions. However, the same sort of TV companies will have a news channel which at 5 o'clock at night will show the first stages of a man being burnt alive in a cage. Now, what's more horrific? The world is back to front, which is a reason why I have nothing to do with real life anymore, and just I prefer to live my life purely in fantasy. That's the way I like it, and I'll embrace whatever my children want to do in that respect. I'll embrace, but and try and shield them from the real crap that's happening in the world.
Dan, I'm going to let you plug many things now. Okay. You've got a shop as well, and you've got the Pyewacket and...
Yep, I've got Pyewacket and Peck, which, if you can spell it...
I have trouble finding it. What am I looking for again?
Yeah, it's a collective of artists on one website. It's like Etsy, but with everything on there is a little bit... It's the strange
dark
stuff.
And weird.
Dark. I wouldn't say it's all dark, but there's definitely the majority of it is weird stuff. You know, you've got taxidermy foxes with wax children's faces stitched on the front of them, and
you've got some chocolate fetuses as well.
Chocolate. Chocolate fetus skulls.
It's quite dark.
Make really good baby shower presents. But yeah, it's Pyewacket and Peck, and I think it's PYE, WACKETT, and Peck, which is PECK with an E on the end, .com. If you go there, that's it's not just my work. It's probably about 30 other artists as well.
Yeah, stuff on there.
Yeah,
and also your Lebanon Circle, which is tricks, magic tricks, and
it is. Yeah, Lebanon Circle prop and illusion design. So it is essentially magic tricks, but there's a consulting service there as well, which I do stuff for TV companies, films, whoever wants to do something creepy but properly.
Yeah. What films have you worked on?
I did some work for obviously Guillermo del Toro a couple of years ago. Did some work on the TV series Lewis, which was the Inspector Morse spin-off. They had a fetish club in a derelict church,
where
there was a murder scene, and that was a whole day's shooting. It was a derelict church in Shepherd's Bush. It was a very interesting site because it was completely cordoned off to the public, and it was down in the crypt. So they converted it into a fetish nightclub, and all these extras turned up for the day. And I think it was November, and we got there, and they were already there waiting to get in. And there was transvestites, gimps, all waiting outside. It was in the middle of a housing estate as well. And in the basement in this crypt, all the walls were covered in occult symbols. So people have been obviously breaking in and doing occult rituals in this crypt, and all the writing and everything was still on the walls in there.
Wow!
And if you actually went up into the church itself, there was torn up Bibles everywhere, and it was an amazing set. You just moved in straight away and did all the stuff there.
Cool.
And yeah, I've done little bits for. I've had work appear on where you wouldn't expect it. Come Dine With Me.
Yes.
You know, I've had my work appear on that. Little bits for the BBC, for ghost story type bits and bobs, and they were interested in me working on that. Release the Hounds that has just finished on TV.
Okay.
But they
can't say I've seen that.
No, it's like a game show where they have to survive so long or escape.
They literally release the hounds.
Yeah,
that sounds charming.
And it was. They rang me up and asked me what's the best way to scare the crap out of people.
Yeah,
and they kept me on the phone for about an hour. Then I was like, actually, hold on a minute, I'm consulting here for nothing. So I said, look, I've given you enough information. If you're interested, come back to me. And they never came back. However, I heard from from people that some of those ideas had actually been used in the but that that is the way TV works.
Yeah,
they'll get some young girl straight out of university who's a bit chatty, and she'll keep you talking on the phone while she's getting all the good ideas for nothing.
Yeah,
it's
showbiz.
That's it. And what about you? What have you got lined up for the next 12 months?
Well, next 12 months, I'd say what I've been up to so far with the Tom Baker. Well, we did another shoot, and he's 81 now, and he came along to the studio in January, and I did a whole set of portraits. We had an owl in.
Yes.
A real owl. We had a lot of costumes. We dressed him up Sherlock Holmes-like, I suppose. We had a real fog in there as well, and because we can't take him outside in the freezing, so we recreated it inside the studio. And we had grandfather clocks and swinging watches. So it's all kind of quite evocative. And now we sell those on our website, which is www.legend-photography.com.
I was going to say, you beat me to it. Especially for magicians as well, as you've done stuff for Andy Nyman. If people are looking to capture the essence of their character, you're the person who can do that for them.
Yeah, there's a bit of that as well. I've been doing levitating magicians. I could do those as well with very little Photoshop. That's part of my magic interest, because I love magic as well. That's part of the reasons why I like to do magicians. So I've got various things going with Davenports and Alakazam, but come to me directly as well. That's always fun. But the Tom Baker things, very briefly, we're the only ones that can do a full signing filmed
Okay.
And art gallery prints. So
Yeah.
that's an exclusive.
I know there's a
to
lot of
us.
Doctor Who fans listen to the show, and
Yeah. So I was there this morning and videoing him, saying hello to a fan and doing all that stuff. So that was great. So that's pretty exciting. And the rest of the year, you know, I'm just looking at all kinds of interesting projects that are coming up. You know, it's varied, but I always like a challenge. Someone phones me up and says, "Hey, I've got a tarot reader who's coming over from." I think he's coming here from Cornwall to have a shoot, and he sent me a mood board the other day because I like that. So send me some ideas.
Yeah.
And the ones that he really liked was the Edward Norton Illusionist.
Okay.
So that's cool. And then another picture of a man just standing in the fog.
Yes.
So right up my street. Very.
I actually know who you're talking about, but I'm not going to say his name on the show.
Yeah.
I think I know who it is.
But I love all that.
Yeah.
And I want to do more vintage shoots, and I want to do more events as well. We should have a fairy tale day coming up soon, but I want to do quite a few smaller events.
Yeah.
As well. So,
are you doing the event at Bodiam Castle again? The fairy.
The
fairy festival.
Yeah.
Well,
it's actually not at the castle. It's nearby. We should be doing that in June.
Okay.
But I'm more geared around the idea of doing other events at the original Hut Company.
Right.
Because they've got a big venue where they'll have a little side kitchen, and you can turn it into anything you like, and you can be underneath the stars in the middle of nowhere with the castle in the foreground and the steam. And they actually have the rail link isn't because they haven't bought the land yet.
Okay.
Join Robertsbridge to Bodiam Castle, so there's a rail line there with an engine which we can use for shoots and things. So that'd be good fun.
Yeah.
But I've got obviously the website Legend-Photography, but also you can follow me on the podcast at The Fantasy Pod. And you've got one as well, have you?
We have. It's Menagerie Mystic. That's the Twitter. I think it's Menagerie Mystic.
Yeah.
Because for some reason Mystic Menagerie had already been taken. So that's the way you can find us on Twitter. On Facebook, it is just the Mystic Menagerie.
Yeah. And mine's the Fantasy
Facebook.
Podcast.
Yeah. And iTunes. Just go on the Mystic Menagerie.
Yeah, or the Fantasy Podcast.
On the Fantasy Podcast, and you'll
find
both shows there.
Yes.
And, it's. I think we kind of both started podcasting almost around the same time, and it's definitely the way forward.
I love it.
Spreading the word.
It's great fun. And as everyone says, the pictures the better.
Yes.
Because we're sitting in a castle here.
Yeah, it is like a castle. It's we're in my. I like to call it a man cave, but
it's got a huge screen here and lots of games and computers and cool posters. I won't see what the posters are. No, they're actually pretty cool. Got a Beetlejuice one up here, Goonies, Jaws. Yeah, there's a skeleton with an Iron Man mask on it.
Yeah, with an Iron Man mask on.
A load of dragons about. It's a gamer's dream in here.
This is where I come to escape. However, once the kids are old enough, they'll probably be in here more than
you won't be allowed in
than
here.
I will. Yeah, so
fantastic. Well, thank you very much, Dan.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been wonderful talking to you.
And you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Dan for 911. Where's your emergency?
This is Sadie. 231 Rock Rimmon Road.
What's the problem?
Send the police.
What's the problem there?
The chimp killed my friend.
What's the problem with your friend?
Oh, please.
What's the problem with your friend? I need to know.
Send the police up with a gun. Hurry
Who
up.
has a gun?
Please hurry up. He's killing my girlfriend.
What is the problem?
He's killing my friend.
Who's killing your friend?
My chimpanzee.
Oh, your chimpanzee is killing your friend.
Hello and welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie. Now we have a very special guest with us, and his name is David Chaudoir, and he is he's working in television. He's a film producer. He's worked for things such as The Walking Dead, American Horror Story. And he's done music videos for bands like Athlete and Star Sailor. So welcome to the show, David.
Hi, Dan. Hi, Freddie. Good to see you, or good to hear from you.
Great to have you here, David. Yeah, it's been a while. I mean, for listeners that may not know, it's the Mystic Menagerie, when it started as a magazine, it was yourself that helped initially the first, 2 issues, I think, or 2 or 3 issues, the artwork side of things.
That's correct. I saw you on the Magic Cafe, and you'd put out a call to launch this magazine. And I'd recently come back to Magic and had seen Eugene Berger talking about this bizarre magic, he called it.
Yeah.
And I found it fascinating that there was another way of presenting magic, and it tapped into my love of horror and my love of sort of the supernatural, and I suppose magic as storytelling, and less based around what Chris Gould said in your last podcast, the sort of look at me magic. It was more about the story.
Yeah.
So when Freddie put the call out, I thought, wow, and obviously because I have design skills, I'm not really a producer. I'm a graphic designer, and I worked in I've worked in television for 20 years, and in the course of me designing stuff, I then went on to direct stuff, and I made a conscious decision to leave design behind. And I started directing music videos, and as you say, quite rightly, for those bands.
Yeah.
And I directed a couple of commercials, and then I have worked at various television channels, including the channel that made. They didn't make AMC in America makes The Walking Dead, but they were the first channel in the UK to show The Walking Dead and American Horror Story and The Wire and Breaking Bad. And I was the head of design there, so I was lucky enough to be able to work on some of those shows and create promotions.
It must have been amazing to be involved with those iconic shows. Yeah,
I mean, it's fantastic because also they were the first. It was the channel that was putting them out before anybody else. There's a story around the Walking Dead promo. I created the Walking Dead promo, and somebody leaked it onto YouTube. We never got to the bottom of who leaked it. And it went viral on Twitter, and I hadn't even really heard of Twitter before then, but it went big on Twitter. And Robert Kirkland, I think AMC had to put out a denial that it was nothing to do with them. And Robert Kirkland said, "Oh, it's a very nice fan-made thing." I'd have to be a very wealthy fan to have made that. But anyway, that's a little story around The Walking Dead. So yes, so I've got sort of gone back to what I love, which is magic and horror, and I'm making a short film. And the short film, as you can see, is called Bad Acid. And I'll read a little bit of the synopsis for you.
Okay.
You can stop me if you get bored. But I saw a fantastic. This is a real thing, and I'm not going to give the name of the hypnotist. I've spoken to him since, but I saw a hypnotist who implanted a hallucination of a genie into somebody's head. And it was absolutely fascinating how he turned it from a nice genie into a nasty genie. And that sort of sowed the seed of the story. And it's about this. I then moved away from the original hypnotist and came up with a character. And it's about this chap called Marvin Masculine. He's a hypnotist, a magician whose success has come and gone, leaving him a bitter divorcee with nothing in the bank and a penchant for getting stoned. After a performance that went from bad to bloody awful, Marvin acquired a black eye but lost his beloved prop of a genie lamp. Visiting an antique dealer friend who pities him, Marvin is given an antique lamp with a checkered past and a secret stash of LSD blotters within. With nothing to lose, he takes one. So basically, he starts having hallucinations, and in his hallucinations, something very nasty appears, and other people that he's hypnotizing start to see it as well. And it ends with somebody being murdered, and in one of the crime scene photographs, he sees the lamp. He runs back home, picks up the lamp, and he notices that there's blood on it. and he polishes it just as you do with a genie lamp in a film.
Yeah.
You rub the lamp, and then something very nasty happens. So it's kind of when I wrote it, I'd written a number of different films, and I've written features and stuff. Obviously, nothing's gone into production, and I, probably like you two, I grew up in the 1970s. I'm not sure how old you are, Dan. I think you're younger than myself.
75. So I was around in the 70s, but I can't remember much about it.
In the 1970s, sorry, Freddie, you were about to jump in.
I was around then, yeah, but I remember very vividly.
I'm the youngster. I'm the Mystic Menagerie baby.
Right, okay. But this is the senior common room speaking then. We basically, I don't know, there's something about the 1970s that there was something in the air about horror. Definitely. And bookshops were full of it. The Pan collection of horror stories was being published. It was in full swing then. BBC Two used to show a horror double bill in the evening. And that my sort of formative experience of horror were the anthologies. Those are things that greatly excited me, and I think that those are fantastic. And I know another of your previous guests, Rhys Shearsmith, is a lover of these as well.
Definitely.
Yeah. The fact that you have an individual little story, it's like getting a bag of Revels, and you don't know which sweet you're going to get, whether you're going to get something, a toenail or a weevil or something like that. And I think what's so lovely about those stories is the fact that they didn't necessarily rely on the tropes that now are very, very prevalent in American and British films. There's not necessarily vampires, not necessarily zombies, more self-contained little stories, and that's where this story came from, was writing something self-contained and not containing a vampire or a possession or a Catholic priest or a zombie. So that's what I wanted to do. So I am at the moment trying to. I've got 10 days left, or I've got actually 12 days left. I'm not sure when you're going to put this out, but I am as Orson Welles, and please don't think that I'm trying to associate myself with the great man, but or compare myself to him. But 95% of show business is the business.
Yes.
95% of making a film is raising the bloody money for the film. Yeah. And it's the least exciting and least interesting bit. But I have decided, and am I right in thinking you've done this as well, Dan?
Yes.
I've decided to go down the crowdfunding route.
Yeah, I've done it a few times. And,
really?
Yeah, it's definitely an adventure. And I was going to say, as this show goes out, it will go out tomorrow, so the day after recording. So you'll still have listeners will still have 10 days left to go to Indiegogo and back your project if they want to. And it's called Bad Acid. And really? So you've got, as I say, you'll have 10 days left, so plenty of time. And so you should hopefully see a little bit of a jump in your funding level. But you're almost there anyway, aren't you? You're sort of nearly 70% there.
That's right.
But yeah, crowdfunding is a weird beast. It generally starts off really well and then peters off, and then you have like a lull in the middle. And so I suppose, and then during the last sort of probably 5 days, you see an increase in backer activity.
Yeah.
What you usually find is if you've reached your goal, then you tend to get more backers, because they can see something that's successful, so they want to be part of that.
Yeah.
But obviously, that's not the name of the game. You need the people to actually get you to that level before you. So it's a funny thing. I enjoy doing it, and but it has to be executed correctly, because looking at yours, it looks perfect. It looks like it's been done excellently. But I think on my last one I did, my fairy Kickstarter, the one, I actually lost money on that Just
really,
yeah, it was my error because it just boiled down to the actual product at the end being heavier than I anticipated, and therefore I lost out on shipping. So,
oh my god,
yeah. So I lost about £1,000 on that. However, I've recouped that in sales of the actual product. So, so I've broke evens, but I never made any money out of it. So it's a lot of energy and creative processes that go into something that essentially you don't really get any reward from. Well, I never have anyway, but I've never done anything, like a film project like this. So,
well, I think it's worth mentioning to your beloved fans that I am going to be borrowing some of your props.
Yes,
and extensively from both of your collections, because you've got such wonderful things, and I know that Freddie's got some marvellous. Looks
some
like
artefacts, some of my artefacts. They've been featured. My artefacts have been featured in Take a Break's Fate and Fortune. So Trashy Women's Magazine is where it's at. But no, so because I exhibit stuff, I've got a lot of genuine items as well. So they are going to be featured. They're going to make a little starring role in Bad Acid.
And some of Dan's as well, because if you look on, I'm not sure that you have a website, do you, Freddie? But Dan, you certainly do.
I do, yeah. I've got a couple of sites, yeah.
And there's some fantastic props, and I think that's I want the props for the antique dealer sequence where he goes to an antique dealer, and I think that so much of telling a story in a film is obviously a very visual thing as opposed to a story. However, you guys can set the scene by having a very interesting prop or a very interesting backdrop, or to set that performance. Whereas in film, you do that visually. You don't have to say it. And I think just a couple of those things in shot instantly puts you in mind of something strange.
In my head, I've got like a cross between the antique shop in Gremlins, where he buys the Mogwai from, and the scene from Company of Wolves, where the camera's panning around the girl's bedroom while she's dreaming, with all those dolls and teddy bears, and there's that one with a head that's rocking backwards and forwards, and the way I'm visualising it is somewhere in between those two, but it was probably completely different to what you've got in mind, David. But,
the thing about film is that nothing ever is set in stone until the cameras start rolling, because at the moment we're trying to get several key members of the cast. We had quite an interesting actor drop out. We're pursuing somebody else at the moment. And so we've got that. Locations as well. It is almost impossible to find an antique shop in London who will let you film on their premises.
Sure.
Primarily because they've got very, very expensive stuff in there.
Yeah.
And presumably, unfortunately, people have stolen in the past, or something's been broken. So I thought, I'll sod this. I'll go closer to home. Now, I live between Reading and Newbury in the south-east of England, and that's in a county called Berkshire, and there is a very famous town, famous for the wrong reasons, unfortunately, called Hungerford.
I know it, yeah.
Where there was a mass shooting, unfortunately, and several people died. However, aside from that, it's a very picturesque town, which is full of antique shops, and I thought, sod it, I'll have a look there, and met this wonderful proprietor. I'm not going to go into any detail because nothing has been set in stone.
No,
sure.
But I found a fantastic possible location, and it's that the thing about film is you have to be very flexible about, especially on a very low budget film.
Yeah,
you have to be incredibly flexible about where you're shooting, who you're going to be shooting with, and as I said, we've got something marvellous. I'm going to be grabbing as many of your props as I possibly.
Do you know what you need in your film, David? You need a male lead, right, who looks a bit like Jason King.
It has been mooted before, Freddie, by I think one of your 100,000 fan clubs, people in your fan club. You know, they've been petitioning me long and hard.
Exactly. I've only been in one film. It was Adventures of an Amorous Plumber. That's the only thing I did.
Oh dear.
I don't want to talk about that.
No.
It was a painful experience, literally.
I think you can get that on that's on YouPorn now, isn't it?
That's right, yeah. It's a bend over production. But I didn't realise how near you are to me. I'm on the Queen's doorstep, David, so it's down the road, you know what I mean? There's this sort of strange how we're so nearby.
Well, it's going to be very easy to get the props over to you, because I think obviously all my stuff is going to have to be delivered by hand. There's no way I'm going to entrust it in the hands of a courier. But I've got a truck, so I can chuck everything in the truck, and then I can probably swing by, pick Freddie up en route with his collection of oddities, and then
and bring them down.
Yeah, we can bring them down, and obviously you're going to be filming over a period of a few days, or you're hoping to get those scenes shot in a day.
That's a very, very short scene, so hopefully that will be done in a day.
It'll be a day out. I don't get out very often.
and if you want, David, we can do a Mystic Menagerie report from the filming.
Absolutely.
Because you're not far from me. It's probably about half an hour, 40 minutes maybe max in a car from where I am to you. So that's quite close. The thing I like about Badass is it's got that 70s horror film vibe, because it's got a mixture of two really good, psychedelia, do you know what I mean, and horror, which in the early 70s, psychedelia was still hanging about, So, and a lot of films, you see the 70s films, there's a psychedelic element to them, which is missing now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there are horror films that play with it, which is sort of a psychological element, because, all horror exists in the mind anyway, but I wanted to play with that whole notion of, is it real? Is it is it a trip? Is it a hypnotic effect?
Yeah.
And I think that's, to my mind, the most fascinating thing, and that's the magic of cinema and the magic of film, is that you can conjure things which, you can, on a most basic level, you can be filming in South Africa and open a door, and you can then, the door opens in Britain, and nobody would be any the wiser.
Yeah.
But on a special effects side of things, I initially said, am I going to go the whole hog and do the whole 70s thing and have like rubber tentacles and things? There is an element of humour in this as well, and I think that's what I loved about the films from the 1970s, was that there was a slight, there was, as you say, the psychedelia. If you watch films like Theatre of Blood with Vincent Price, that's got fantastic outfits and big hair and stuff like that. But also it had a humour. Where else could you see our beloved Arthur Lowe from Dad's Army having his head sawn off? And that's what I hope to capture a little bit, is getting some actors who are slightly better known for television.
Yeah.
And putting them in a film and, doing nasty things to them.
Well, if you could saw Vernon Kay's head off in the film, you know what I mean? But it's funny saying that, I suppose your tagline could be Svengali meets Sid Barrett. That'd be quite a good tagline to have, wouldn't it?
Really?
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Poor old Sid. He's never come back, has he?
No, and he's sadly gone. I met him once in the 80s, and that's a story for another time. I was writing a book about him, and I met him very briefly in 1988, yeah.
Just looking at your Indiegogo project now, David, you've got some really interesting backer levels, and I can see one that will attract Freddie straight away, the Diana Dawes level.
Wow, yeah, of course.
And that is, again, the theatre of blood. But on some of your levels, so if you can go through, David, just what you get at the lowest level, going through up to into the dizzy heights of what we've got, the Jenny Agutter level, for example.
Absolutely. I've got, and I'd love all the listeners of the Mystic Menagerie, and I'll get it right one of these days, to back at any level that they want. The opening level is the Terry Thomas level, which is for £10, and it's named after the character who gets bumped off in The Abominable Dr. Phibes. And in that, you get an on-screen credit, a small one, and you get a digital download of the film. For £25, this is the Diana Dawes level, which is she's the former beauty queen who rather let herself go in the 1970s.
Wasn't she in the Two Ronnies, The Worm That Turned?
Yeah, and Prince Charming, Adamant.
Yeah, that's her. Yeah, Prince Charming, Adamant. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And one up from there, you get the David Warner, which is the this is £50, and you get an on-screen credit on IMDb. You get an on-screen, you get a credit on IMDb and an on-screen credit.
Okay.
And the sky's the limit, basically. I've got a fantastic artist called Graham Humphreys, who is sort of the man who does film posters, and he's going to be doing a UK-style quad for us. And one of the levels you can get those. I've got right near the top as well, we're having a special prop made for somebody's breathing very heavily. Is that you?
No, it's not me. I think it's Freddie. It's the thoughts of his window cleaning film.
So I've got a specially hand-built prop of the lamp, the genie lamp, which is
wonderful,
being done by a product designer right as we speak, which is going to be 3D printed and dressed. So that's going to be fantastic. And right at the top, I mean, somebody has already claimed it as a £6,000 Christopher Lee, and that is the executive producer level.
Wow.
And the whole point of this film is to get it shown. So many films get made and then sort of disappear onto the internet. We're actually planning on having a premiere at a fantastic, there's a chain of London hotels which have screening rooms underneath, and we're having a champagne reception and a viewing of the film before it then goes off to film festivals.
Wonderful.
So your help and any help from any of the listeners of the Mystic Menagerie, I've managed to say once, I think, will be very, very welcome.
Yeah, we have got a lot of listeners and people who follow us on Twitter who are part of the film industry, especially horror films. So it'd be interesting to see, if any of them come forward and back your project, because it certainly looks worthwhile. What's your
definitely.
What are you looking at in terms of production time from when you're looking at actually finishing the film and doing a premiere? Do you have like a target in mind,
we have a target. I have a producer, a wonderful producer, who is going on to a feature film straight afterwards. She's produced a number of short films. Her name's Suki Richardson, and we're aiming to shoot sometime around the end of April.
Okay.
And then we'll be going into post-production. And because there are some effects in here, there will be some post. And then we're having some sound design. We've got some incredible people involved in the project. I've got the company which was voted the post-production house of the UK of London 2015. They do all the audio for things like The Voice and things like that, but there's a fantastic sound designer who works for them.
Okay.
And they're doing the sound. We've got some special effects guys. I've got the colorist who does the color for Peaky Blinders is doing the colorization. So we've got some real professionals working on the film, and we're aiming to get it ready for a screening in July 2015.
Wow, okay, that's
brilliant.
That's soon. That's great.
Yeah,
it looks brilliant. I mean, it's a film that's right up my street. It looks really good. The concept's good, and the whole vibe of it. It's like getting back to how horror should be.
Thank you, Freddie. Thank you.
Definitely. We're really looking forward to it. And as I say, we can't wait to hopefully be on set with our collection of oddities and freakish props and, to see there and meet you in person. And
two freaky people as well.
Maybe you could actually just stick us in the background. Just like a little cameo in the back.
Yeah.
Just like, when someone isn't quite comfortable with being on film and they keep looking out the corner of the eye at the camera.
a couple of gargoyles.
Yeah, wax dummies, or like mannequins.
Mannequins would be great, yeah.
Yeah.
Speaking of mannequins.
Yeah.
Autons.
Well, it's been a pleasure to speak to you guys, and thank you very much for having me on your show. And, I'm looking forward to hearing from and having tweets from any of your followers. And of course, if anybody wants to pick up a perk, if you Google Bad Acid, Indiegogo, you'll find the campaign there, and I'd love you to get involved. Thank you very much indeed.
Wonderful. Thanks for joining us.
We'll tweet the link to that as well on our Twitter, so people who visit the show can find it very easily. So we'll put it on the Facebook and the Twitter page.
Well, that was David Chaudoir, and I think you'll agree, Freddie, that sounds like an amazing project, and I thoroughly urge all of our listeners to go and back it. Even if you back it at the smallest level, every little helps, and you might even see me and Freddie as mannequins.
As cameos, yeah. And David's a good bloke, and he's on the right wavelength with what he's doing, and he deserves all your support. So if you've got a few extra quid and you want to support something worthwhile, this is the thing that I feel that is worth your attention, because it's like a great film, and David's a brilliant director, so it's going to be something very good to be involved in,
He is one of the founding fathers of the Mystic Menagerie as well. I mean, the first 2 issues, if you look at the artwork and layout, that's all David's work. Then I jumped on issue 3, and that's where I joined the Mystic Menagerie. So I've not always been there. It was initially Freddie and David's baby. So
yeah, and David wrote a couple of articles for the original first 2 issues. There's one about the Pitt Rivers Museum. He wrote some very good pieces in there. Yeah. And he's very well informed on the horror, particularly the sort of 70s, 60s horror, which I'm very much into. So, and there's some good articles. So if you've got the first 2 issues, you can see some of David's work there as well. But it's great to have him on the show.
Excellent. Well, we're going to take a short break, and we'll be back in a moment.
Well, just in time for St. Patrick's Day, crowds are coming by the dozens to get an up-close view at what some say is a piece of Irish folklore.
Some people in the Crichton area of Mobile say a leprechaun is taking up residence in their neighborhood. A leprechaun. NBC 15's Brian Johnson has more.
Curiosity leads to large crowds in Mobile's Crichton community, many of you bringing binoculars, camcorders, even camera phones to take pictures.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun say yeah?
Hello and welcome back to the Mystic Menagerie. Well, I'm sure you'll agree that was another excellent show. Into another 2.5 hours. So, you're definitely getting your money's worth there, which reminds me, you should, if you feel like you're getting something out of the show and you want to carry on listening to Freddie and I, our little tales and our really great guests that we get, then remember to pop on over to Patreon and become one of the supporters of the Mystic Menagerie.
And and also make sure to keep checking our Twitter and Facebook pages, because we're going to keep you updated on stuff. We're going to have the pictures of the Cornish Piskie will be on there soon, and also links to the Bad Acid film, David Chaudoir's great film, which you can actually get involved in. So keep your eyes out, and we'll see you very, very soon. It's been a great show, and thank you very much for listening.
Thanks a lot. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. All I gotta do is look up in the tree. Who else seen the leprechaun say yeah?
I wanna know where to go. I wanna know where to go.
Give me the go.
I wanna know where to go.